And here we are live. Live. How you doing? I'm in a good, very hot mood. Hot when I say heat wave coming through, but I'm okay. I'm good on heat wave. So definitely starting a little later than usual as of late today, but that's just how it is. I had a bunch of little things to do and had to get them done. People on here always think they know me, but I'm like, I try to tell people over the years, I give so much of myself away, but there's a lot you just don't know about me. So much that if you think you understand me or you judge me, you don't understand me at all. Like people don't know me, and I always say this: you can't really know somebody over the internet. Like it's like, look, I care about the people that support me. That's real. I appreciate all that. That's all real. You can take that to the bank, right? But I don't pretend that just because I give a shit about some people, that suddenly it makes me a certain kind of person. A lot of people assume a lot of things about me. It's like, hey, you can assume what you want. Not everything you assume about me is going to be right. All right. I noticed I made a comment lately, and some people, when you make certain comments or you make a certain point, and you're talking about certain people, and they'll say a name, and I'm like, well, that just creates drama and allows people to ignore the point. It's like I get a lot of heat for I guess things I said or ways I behave over the years. Well, notice some other YouTubers come along in the old school or around the old school or other TTRPG YouTubers, and the problems that were with me, these people will act identical, and then everybody's okay with the same behavior. I'm like, okay, so just say, tell me it's not the behavior that you have an issue with, it's me personally, because that's the truth, right? It's like if you have a personal issue with me, just say that. Don't stop pretending you have all these excuses as to why you hate me, because I look at all these other YouTubers in the tabletop role playing game community, especially around the old school. They behave the same way, and all the issues like, well, you behave this way. This is why we don't like you. Well, so does he, and you're fine with him. So you just know people are full of shit. I love catching people off that are full of shit, which is a lot of old school tabletop role playing game YouTubers. They're absolutely full of shit. They'll tell you what they don't like about you. Suddenly they like it about somebody else. I'm like, well, okay, it's me you have the issue with, not the behavior, not the words, not the actions. You're completely fine with it over here. So just suck my ass. I don't take you serious anymore, because some people have credibility with me, even when they don't like me, until I see them be two-faced. It's like, oh, you don't have you don't like that behavior. Okay, well, fair enough. Maybe that's the case. And I see another guy come along and he'll act the same way. I'm like, well, okay, you have no issue with the behavior. It's me. It's how some people are, my man. Tonight, I'm covering Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 1E monsters. So I'll go through the background, what they brought into the game, uh, just how they change gameplay with miniature gameplay, stuff like that. So when I get to covering 1E monsters, I think it's going to be really like interesting. I covered 1E before, but I haven't covered it from this point of view. And I'll be doing the same thing with the 2E monsters, which I think is going to be fun, right? A lot of fun coverage. But here I am just to shoot the shit for a while. Talk. I do get a kick out of some guys out there. They talk exactly the same as me, but I'll say it first. And they don't even say it what I say as well. Like my explanation for the thing is spot on, man. It's just it's a home run. Like when I explain something, it's very clear. And I'll see a guy that comes along who tries to say what I said, but he's not as clear. He doesn't hit it out of the park. And I'm like, okay, you're all going to like his shit because you hate me personally. But I mean, on explanation, the reason I have more impact than this guy is because my explanation will be more clear and make more sense. Like, I'll explain it, and it will be that's you want to hear what I have to say first before the guy who's just sort of trying to say what I said, but says it very carelessly, right? So I've heard some things about certain people, like WotC people, talking about like they want to do live gaming where they take away some of the issues with the death saves from 5e. Or I'll hear Mike Merles talk about how you should do role play before worrying about dice rolling. And my only criticism with them is they've developed a style of gameplay amongst their audience, amongst the customer base for WotC, that do not want to play that way. And you don't have enough influence to change it. Like, you have developed since 3rd edition up to 5e, WotC has developed a crowd that wants to roll the dice first. They developed it to bring in more customers where people were not as creative, not as thoughtful, not as intelligent, right? And they made their part of the hobby for people that were, how can I say, just didn't have the mental capacity for doing these things. And they developed that over a few decades. And now suddenly they want to say, well, let's do it differently. And I'm like, dude, here's the problem. I mean, if you want to run off half the WotC player base, do that. Like, you go ahead and push role play before dice rolling. See how that goes for you. Like, I talked to a few 5e guys that come here. These are individual guys that they're more thoughtful. So out of the WotC group of players, I'd say like 5% are creative, intelligent people that want to have a challenge mentally when they play the game. They appreciate what I'm saying. They'll come along, and I've talked to like one recently, but I've talked to them over and over again. They're always playing with groups because they have no choice, of people that any form of you need to be challenged in thinking, it's just off the radar. The guy running the game for 5e or 4e or 3e doesn't want to do it. The majority of the player base. And it's like, look, we got some old school guys that crossed over to 3e. I always tell them when they come to me and talk to me, well, that's not how we use 3e. But I'm like, yeah, but all the new people coming into WotC, that's how they used it. They skipped everything with dice rolling. And so WotC has developed people over a few decades where I'm like I get it, like Merles. I get that you have finally, because you're out of the company, you could finally reflect on the hobby and realize, man, it's better gameplay to actually role play a bit before the dice roll. Dice roll can be involved, but you want to role play a bit first. I could get that there's some people that have been doing 5e for so long, they hear the criticism, they hear people like me talk, and they go, you want to know what? The challenge to character death actually makes sense. Like, we should not be playing these, overly safe games. It actually is more appealing to play a little bit more on the edge. Problem is, even when you get a few individuals that are in the WotC world trying that, I get it, but it's like, guys, you have brought in a surplus of people that can't think. Like, they do not have the mentality, they don't have the brain power to think that much. You have an expectation. Now, I define this out. See, Mike Merles and other people that are doing gaming now in the new world, they've learned nothing from the past. I'm like, I came into the hobby in 1987, and I was lucky enough to encounter hobbyists. Really, really, really intelligent guys, right? But when you look at what AD&D 1E brought into the hobby, and what the surplus of people that came in before 3rd edition, TSR was already dragging in people that could not think, that had a hard time playing the game, didn't like challenges, want to play with miniatures, don't want to use the imagination, aren't thinking that well. And what you find is in the old school, if you really examine the Dungeons and Dragons part of it, out of all the people participating in D&D, less than 10% were people that were really, really elite thinkers. So it's like TSR was already going after this sort of how can I say, they eased the game up to bring in people that didn't have the mentality to do a lot of thinking. All right, think about DMs with raw modules, like very simple minds. How do you get them into the hobby? You can't bring people in and say it's very challenging. Why do you think a lot of old school games failed? Good evening, Brop Baby. Black Rose has been here. One of the common complaints outside, like when you go to a thinking game, Black Rose, outside of D&D in the old school, here's a common complaint from the majority of mostly what you call people that got brought in from AD&D 1E into TSR, because the vast majority were not that bright, right? That got brought in through AD&D 1E through TSR. What was the common complaint they would get? They would that all games outside of D&D were too hard for the game master. Hey, Hazeg. But yeah, and why was that a common complaint for a lot of games outside of D&D? Because outside of D&D, after AD&D 1E, you bring in the vast majority of people that don't have the mentality to do a lot of thinking. And now to hobbyists like myself, games from Rollmaster to Cyberpunk, if properly done, not ran in a generic way, but properly as the game designer intended, I didn't find it challenging. But if you went to the majority of people that got drawn in by TSR at the time, that weren't the brightest people in the hobby, they would all say it's too hard. I'm like, yeah, for you it is. I get it. And it's like WotC just continued. Like we always get mad at WotC for doing a certain thing, but TSR was already trying to simplify the game so much that it was obvious who they were trying to attract. People that just didn't have a deep creative imagination, that were very thoughtful. It doesn't mean you don't get people that are intelligent in the hobby. Don't get me wrong, but if you're trying to open up to a bigger customer base, you have to accept the majority of human beings in life are animals. Like if you stick the hobby to just intellectual people, like the hobbyist, if you actually just stick making games for just them, you'll find that it's very few people you can actually draw to the actual hobby. Like the idea will be attractive, but many people get turned off because it'd be too challenging for them. So what do you have to do? What do you do to take care of that? You have to develop a game that becomes easier for people that are not that bright. Right. That's you have to. It's the only way you can get a bigger customer base in the hobby. You have to start. It's why AD&D 1E got it. Like TSR and Gary got a lot of complaints from people that were in the hobby. He got a lot of complaints when they bring out AD&D 1E. He got I don't want to use the word crucified, but he got taken to whatever you want to call it. Anyway, he had a lot of people writing in that were hobbyists, intellectual people that were writing into Gary with like letters, like large letters complaining to him, like, what have you done? You've opened the hobby up to people that don't belong here. Monster Stream is going to be good. Monster Stream. Now, guys, since you're all here, I love you. I say it, it's legit. But I'll be real with you. I've tried to tell people over the years that they're like, and I said this earlier, people try to pretend like they can know me from just watching me on the internet. And I'm like, you can't know me. You can know me a bit. And I'm very loyal to the people that support me, people that follow me. I do care. It's all real. It's all genuine real. But to think you know me, it's like as soon as I start showing people who I really am, they just like, oh, that's you? Yeah. Told you didn't know me. So many people assume they can know you from watching you on YouTube or something. I'm like, you can know me as far as like, is Steven a bright guy and not full of shit about gaming? Yes. Am I acceptable in certain ways? Yes. It's of course I'm not letting everything out over YouTube. And I play a little undercover in life. Like you don't just always say what you think or tell everybody your opinions or you paint something up. It's like certain things are true. I'll mention them and you'll think, well, he's on that side of the fence. I'm like, well, that's what you think. That's what you think. I'm making a case. It doesn't mean I agree with every detail I'm saying out loud. I'll say this, Miles. I like using. It's such a general question. The way I put it is this: I like using monsters when they're appropriate to be used for the right circumstance. So, if I create a situation, I look at what monster is meant for that or that area or that situation, and then I use it without shame. I've never had when people ask me, "Do you have a favorite monster?" To a degree, no, not really. I just try to love all monsters. Or there are a few monsters I probably am not fond of, probably, right? But I mean, every monster is what it is when you get to the right situation. It's like skeletons. You like using skeletons all the time, like no. But if I'm in the right situation, like if we're in the right situation, then yes. I don't worry about bouncing. I'm old school in that way. People are like, do you worry about balancing a fight to make sure your guys have a chance? I don't even think about it. Like that, my mind is completely turned off when like there's 6 people in the. I don't care, but that sometimes can work in the player's favor because I don't care about balancing. That I just worry about is this appropriate for the situation. No problem there, Black Rose. I get it, baby. Right and slow. All good. All good. I see. I see a bit of that. Like, it's like I don't even care if you can overwhelm a monster as I put it together. Like I don't think about it, but I just if I stop to think about it, I wouldn't care. I just wouldn't care. I just don't. I don't care. I don't think about it. I just don't care. I know. Would the monsters overwhelm you? They could. Is there lots of ways to win fights that aren't just on paper? You walk up and fight. Yeah. Is there a lot of interesting ways to run monsters? Well, I don't run a video game or a board game, so when I run monsters, especially like goblins or anything, like they all have personalities to me. So some might fight very careless in a group. Some might be more credible, right? And I think about how they're behaving as they're walking around. Are they being careless? Are they taking the extra shot? Are they? I feel it out. I feel it out. I decide what they are, but I never play like it's like a board game. Like, oh, goblins do no, no. Goblins are all beings to me, all personalities. And so people ask me about balance. I'm just like, it's not even a concept in my head for fuck's sakes. I've never thought about it in my life. In 5e, I guess it forces you. But even when I was putting that together last year and I did a bit of 5e, people were like, Steven, that was a little overwhelming. Was it? I don't give a shit. I don't give a fuck. It's up to you to think your way through that. There's lots of ways to win fights and not just walk up like on paper. Like if you're gonna play stupid, if you're just gonna run at the enemies, just well, like goodbye. I'm not out to kill characters. I don't see it that way as a game master. I'm so unforgiving. I don't hate people for playing bad. Like as far as bad decision with their characters, I'm just like, all right, if you make a bad decision and you lose your character, just be okay with making a new one. But I want you to care. I want you to connect with it. But be ready that can happen. I just don't stop and concern myself with it, right? I don't care about balance at all. Not even slightly. Not even slightly. I look at what monster belongs in what area. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get whatever I think belongs in a situation, and I feel it out. I just do. I just do. I don't concern myself at all. Like the idea, balance, it's just unrealistic because to me, it's hey, there's lots of ways you can outthink enemies. There's lots of ways they can behave too. I can have a really strong enemy against you on paper, but if that guy is just like egotistic and taking his time, he might not attack you right away. And well, if he's just walking around talking shit to you, take advantage. Yeah, in my game you can steamroll. Eh, yeah, the way I look at it is like this. I just do not concern with making sure there's the right level. Like, oh, you're a level this, better have the right monsters. Like I've seen, like players get confused too because I'll be realistic. They could be like level 8, and they're all camping on a very long journey, and a few goblins will try to rob their camp. They're like, maybe it's the first group who's built up to this level with me before, like they've never done this before. It's a new group. And like they'll get up and slaughter these guys. What are these guys walking? The fuck? We're all level 8. We just thing is, I look at it like this. Do the goblins know what level the characters are? The goblins would rob the camp with level 2 characters, or rob it with level 8 characters. They don't know your level. They don't care. They just don't care. So sometimes, again, it could be where you're getting an overwhelming enemy. It's like, hey, and there might be warnings too. Like if you go deep into this forest, there's these type of creatures you better watch out. And the idea is that creature would, I mean, you'd be better off being level 8 to fight it. But if you're like level 2, do not go sneaking off too far into the forest. Yet there are the characters going in hunting in the forest. Next thing you know, they run into this big creature. It's like, what the fuck? Like they don't know what to do. They think, do I fight it? I'm like, dude, judgment call. And you got to teach players that you don't put monsters in front of them to fight. Like there's no intention on my end. I'm not putting the monster there so that's your excuse as like a video game to go fight it. It's not a video game. So it doesn't mean you should or shouldn't. It just means you got to sort of take reality in. You got to start judging how vicious a monster looks, what you can do, where you're at. Like you got to consider is the game master putting an encounter in front of me to have the encounter? I'm like, I don't even think that way, dude. So like it's a wrong approach with me. Like don't. I warn players, don't ever think anything's in front of you because I intend for you to encounter it. It's just there. Right. It's just, and I'm pretty good at doing that. So it's like I don't have this mindset where I purposely make sure. That's why I tell people I'm old school. If you judge one session and you think that's how I'm going to run all other sessions, you're confused. I could do a session where there's a lot of social interaction. If you're in the town or city, and we spend a lot of time there doing stuff. I could do the next one where there's a bit of social interaction. There's some combat. Next one might be a lot of combat. But if you ever say to yourself, like if you play one of my sessions and you like say, like Miles was saying, he plays 50% this or like an hour and a half of role play, and then we do combat. I'm like, dude, I do not measure out my sessions. I don't give a fuck. Like, did you stay in the city long enough to do a lot of social interaction? Yeah, I'm not going to push you out. If you want to leave and possibly get into encounters, okay. But I'm not concerned. I run campaigns, long campaigns. A campaign to me is like 50 sessions, 100 sessions. Like I don't run like, if I run one shots, that's different. One shots can be a little bit more me purposely putting you in front of stuff, but usually when I run, most of the time, 99% of the time, it's campaigns. My campaigns are very long, so I just let the game go where it's going to go. Do you spend a lot of time here? Like, it's more, as long as you interact with something, I'm not going to stop you. Right. But I do expect players to interact. Like, it's like, if you're playing characters and you're tired of talking in character, say there's 2 of you out of 5 and you're tired, you got to talk to the other characters. You got to say, can we move on? You got to stop looking at me. I'm not responsible for where you go. Like, when you're ready to leave, you leave, but it's on you. I'm a sandbox TM or game master. So when I tell players you're leading and you have control, don't look to me to guide you. Like, I don't give a fuck. There's 3 of them talking, or are you going to keep following them? Yeah. Are you having a bad time? Yeah. Did you have a bad time because they were doing a lot of social interaction and you didn't talk to them, move it along? Well, that's on you. That's not on me. Don't fucking blame me. 2 players, you're not saying anything to the other characters. That's completely on you. You are 1 fucking $1,000,000% responsible for your own experience. I react. I don't lead. So, yeah, it's on you, dude. If 2 of you out of 5 are not really taking part in something, but at the same time, you can't sabotage every social interaction scene. I notice you do that. Be like, oh, okay, let's do that again, and you're out of the game. Well, you'll get your warning. Now, I see you sabotage it again, like just where you're just cutting off all social interaction to get to your combat. Yeah, you'll get your 1 warning. And then when you try it again, you'll be like, all right, pack your bag up. You're gone. You're off the table. What? Yeah, you have no control here. Like, you have control as far as being fair, right? But the second you try to control the game, that's different. Like, negotiate with the other players. Tell them, hey, can we get to the mission? Talk to the other characters. This is supposed to be a team sport where you're interacting. The second you try to take control of the game for your own selfish need, where you try to control the actual experience for everybody, I'll give you a warning. And if you don't play along with that, you're fucking gone off the table. Like, did you just sabotage social interaction again when they were trying to do it? Yeah, all right, get your stuff. You're gone. I give you your warning. You're gone. And again, I'm the type that will kick my own family and friends out. Like, I'm just like that. And like I told other people in the past, I'll watch grass grow. So if everyone starts playing a certain way, it's like, okay, done. Here, you run the game. I'm not playing. I'm completely gone. I'll go watch grass grow. Now you got no game. Good luck. And good luck running it as well as I do. Have fun. So I'm here to have a certain experience, and it's like I want players to work as a team and negotiate. If you are tired of talking in character, you got to talk to the other players that are maybe participating in it, right? If you want to stop and talk in character or social interaction is important, you got to negotiate that. If individuals in the group start sabotaging parts of the game, right? So when some can't enjoy certain parts, they get a warning right away. Like, okay, that's not teamwork. That's you trying to control the game for your own need. Do that again, and you're off the table. Instantly. And now, players in person know this about me. So players join my game. They don't bother fucking around. They just, it's like, look, if Steven put something in front of you, just fucking interact with it. Like, just do something. Play every part of the game. Because if you're there to play a board game where you only play in action, he's not running that game for you. Like, you can't control his game. Steven will kick you straight the fuck out. He's running a role-playing game. There's a combination of things. So the second you think you can control my game and play a board game action, you'll be fucking gone. I'll fucking boot your ass. I'll notice it right away. You'll get your fucking warning. You're gone. If you don't play right. It's a role-playing game, not a board game. You want to go find a board game? Go play a fucking board game. Right? Good luck. Good luck. So it's a balance there. Now, again, I don't care if the team is playing to action. To a degree, I can go along with that. That's a different thing. If you guys want to, if a whole group is team working towards getting into a lot of action, that's an exception. That's where I'll react. I'll go with you. If the team is doing a lot of social interaction, fair enough, I'll go with you. If the team is doing so much social interaction and then negotiating, working together, go towards action, cool, I'm working with you. All right. But I don't let individual people control the game. They will fucking go. So if you come in as a selfish player trying to control the experience for other people, I'll notice it like a fucking hawk. Like you won't get away with it. You'll get caught doing it right away. I'll give you a warning, and if you do it again, you're fucking gone. Yeah, instantly. I don't give a fuck. See, that's old school strict game master, right? And I don't balance. I don't do a lot of things, but it's all part of it's a mind game. You got to think your way through the entire game. And it's I don't care. I look, I don't mind running games where people make terrible mistakes. I don't even care if you like my game's not a meat grinder, but if you keep playing silly, you can turn it into a meat grinder just by playing poorly. And if you play poorly, I won't stop you. My rule is just how you play. So as as a player, you're sitting up, paying attention, and trying. Okay. All right, you've been through 4 characters. All right, dude. It's not the game forcing you into it. It is your decisions that have turned this game into a meat grinder for you. All right. It's you got to make better decisions. And if you learn to make better decisions, it won't be a meat grinder. So it's really on you to how your experience is going to go. And you won't be able to blame the game or blame me. Because I won't force anything. Right. So players have a lot of control over the game, but then there is that like it's the team has a lot of control, not individuals. So the group. That's why the group is it's a team sport to me, right? I just warn people that's just how it is. Team sport. Like you do things as a group. You want to go do action, you do it as a group. You want to do a lot of social interaction, you do it as a group. And it's not that the 3 players out of 5 would be controlling social interaction, but if they're going around doing it and you're not participating, well, first off, I think it's really you controlling your experience. You should just be participating. And if you are tired of it, talk as a team. Like, hey guys, are you done talking yet? Like, can we go? Like, can we do something else? Negotiate. That's working with the other players, right? And it's better to do that because you'll find that players that are doing a lot, and if you actually are a player not participating in something too often, you can negotiate with the other players to say, hey, right, can you speed that up? Can you do it? Yes, they can. Yeah. So just how it works. That should be always how it works. It's not a solo game. So don't play it like it's solo. Don't look at it like it's solo. Don't. That's how it works. Common sense. And people, my players, even people that don't like just know me from my reputation here, they just join in like they'll know. Like, okay, better be here for a role playing game. Like I don't hate wargaming, but I'm not running a wargaming board game. Just what do you mean by lone wolf? That's what I'd be saying. Like lone wolf as a sabotage what other players are doing. Well, you've heard my explanation. So it's not that you can't play a certain way, but your way can't to the point try to take over the game. Right. So you've heard me explain this, Miles, and I can't be more clear about it. Right. So lone wolf is like if you were just going around and you were completely fine with other people doing social interaction for a bit and you were just quiet a bit, fair enough. If you sneak off and do your own thing, okay. I mean, that's fine. Right. As long as it's not interfering with the overall game. Because when I say team, I'm not just talking about characters. I'm talking about the way you play the game with other players. Like, are they able to go off and do their merchant trade or talk to their thing or get their training or do whatever? If they can do that and you're not interfering with that, I don't care if you're a thief that goes up secretly talking to a thieves guild, or you go off doing your own business as an assassin, say an AD&D 1E. But it's just how you are interacting with the group of players, especially the experience, right? So as long as you're not jumping in and trying to own that part of the game for you as an individual and taking something away from the other players, I don't care. Then do your lone wolf thing. But if it's like lone wolf as in you sabotage so other people can't have a certain experience in the game and you keep fucking that on purpose, like you react to an NPC in a certain way that will cut off dialogue, but you're not doing that because it's your character. You're doing that so you can sabotage that part of the game and take away social interaction. I'll notice it. You'll get caught. You'll get your warning. Do it again. You're gone. It's just that they bring the bad habits. There's all kinds of players too, Miles. Like you got to understand, there's a lot of intelligent players out there that if you meet those guys, they can play a character in a way that actually measures in to be okay. Like they'll work with the other people. They'll help them with their social interaction. They'll have no problem. And they'll still go off and do a bit of a lone wolf character. But at the end of the day, you still have to be working with the group. You have to be a team player when you're out facing threats. If the group has to go for a meeting over a job, you have to be part of that. You got to sort of play into that part, but you could do that and play lone wolf. It's when you get very simple-minded people that they're not intellectually capable of doing things like that. They can end up being players that become the ones that sabotage you, sabotage and interacting with an NPC. It's like, dude, look, I notice this stuff like breathing here. It's just don't bother. I've been through thousands of players. Like, don't waste my time. I'll catch you and I'll kick you out of the game. Like, you'll get your warning, and if you don't stop, you're gone. And everybody's just sort of laughing apart. Like when there's a new guy that comes around in our gaming community, and you order them to like join, and they start hinting at the bad behavior, the other players at my game will start laughing at them. Like what's funny? Well, you're going to be kicked out soon. They'll be like, huh? You're trying to screw us from talking to people, right? Well, no, I'm not, like, because they'll get called out. Yeah, Steven's going to notice. They'll tell him, like, if I'm gone to the bathroom, I'll come back. And players have already warned the new player, like, you're completely new to the community, right? Yeah, you're one of these guys. Okay, all right. And then he'll just go back into the game. He'll actually try to sabotage something. And I'll be like, all right, you're just trying to kill social interaction. These guys wanted to talk to him. Do that again, you're off the table. And the guy will realize the warning the other players have given him is not a joke. I notice it like a hawk. Like, you will not pass by me with anything. Like, I will catch it every time. Yeah, I'll just kick you off the table. All right. Everyone knows just to show up. It's a team sport. They know that. That's it. Now, some players, there's a lot of people in the hobby that play the game this way, in the selfish way. And because of being a YouTuber, this is part of me where I'm honest as a YouTuber talking about this stuff. There's a portion of people that will not support my YouTube channel. Like, as a YouTuber, I take a hit for being honest about this stuff, because they want people to be cheap. They want their cheap behavior to be accepted. They don't want to be called out. They don't want to be pinpointed. They don't want to, because so many people behave poorly in the hobby. They really do, right? And it's just how it is. Good players will know that I'm just doing something good for them. They just know that. If you're new to the behavior and you're not used to it, like say you're a new player in the hobby and you see me getting strict with somebody, you can think I'm being an asshole first. But like what you'll realize is after, like, if I gotten rid of these guys and there's like 8 months that go by and you're having great sessions with me, and then you hear about another group where there's a player who has sabotaged social interaction, you hear all the complaints and the horror stories, you'll realize just how good you have it with me. Like, I seem strict at first, but you realize, oh, Steven didn't do that. We would not be having a great time 8 months in. We would have these stories like these other guys have, where the game master didn't get on that stuff. He didn't remove the players that are being selfish. And because of that, they're controlling. They're not having the social interaction. They're going into action. Some players are very unhappy in the group. It's like, I always tell players that are very new, like, I know it can seem strict, and I know that can seem like a turnoff because I'm playing authority here. I'm a game master. But I'm not abusive. That's not the point of, like, even though maybe you feel that way from what you're saying, because you'll line that up with Taiwan being really harsh. It's 8 months into the gaming sessions that you realize just how good your gaming sessions are consistently good. And you're not having selfish players, you're not having the experience spoiled on you, and you'll hear about other groups that do. It's because their game masters were nice. They didn't call something out, they didn't push back on a selfish player, and so that group is having issues. They have unhealthy players, they might not finish their campaign, stuff like this. So that little bit of strictness I show up front might be like, okay. I mean, it's like, dude, put it this way: when it comes to problem players, if you're not aggressive with them, you have a choice. Problem players can sometimes adjust to you. So I say 30% will actually adjust to aggressive, me pushing them back on them. They'll actually adjust. They'll actually become good players. They'll adjust straight into it because they'll respect that. The problem is players that are like that do not respect. And they just, every time I talk to them, very, very honest, if you can get deep down into it, I'm like, the game master is nice to you. You don't respect him, do you? No, they don't. That's their issue. That's another issue with guys that are pushy trying to control the game. If you are nice to them, they honestly won't respect you. Right? That's another issue because they've been able to push you around and you haven't pushed back. Now, 70% of guys that want to get away with bad behavior will just leave. They'll be upset with a game master like me. Right? But it's my groups that are going to benefit from my aggression towards problem players. Right? They'll appreciate it. They'll get this great experience in the long run forward. And when we think about it, I'm even taking some problem players and making 30% of them become good players because they actually respect the fact that I won't put up with their shit and they adjust. Right? It's at 70%, and the 70%, they exist as audience members in the hobby, especially in the old school too. So when I talk like this, understand I have to know as a YouTuber, since I don't bullshit people. I don't play yes man. I don't say things that are fake to get support. There's a good portion of guys that are like this, and they're in the audiences of a lot of other old school tabletop role playing game YouTubers, and they'll rapidly help them grow. They'll give them all kinds of likes on content before it even starts. As long as you play yes man for them and say what they want to hear, and you don't push back, they'll like your shit, even if they don't really like your shit. Right? They'll give you full support. Me, I have to take the hit because where I'm honest and call these guys up, but I think it's better for the hobby. Like my take is better for the hobby. I think more people need to hear what I have to say, but that means I have to sort of sometimes put the hobby just ahead of myself slightly. Or man, to bullshit, it could really help me as a YouTuber. But to be honest, it helps more with the hobby than it does with me as a YouTuber. And it's those problems. The players I'm picky about are problems. They're always horror stories. They're always selfish. They're always doing this. And especially some YouTube game masters, I'll notice they really adjust to these people. I'm like, it's not good for the hobby to act like that behavior is acceptable. It's good to have a standard. That's what we found when I was coming into the hobby back in '87. The have a standard meant more people got better gaming. Standards on game masters, they don't like it now. Well, anybody can play. Dude, have a standard. Like if that game master sucks, instead of staying at the game whining, get up and leave it. And most players should leave his game. Because what happens if most of you will not play a game with that guy because he's running a game bad? He leaves. And you start setting a standard that if you want to take that seat, you got to run it well. That becomes better for the hobby, not just me, not just individuals, but for everybody. The second you see players sitting at a table where they're unhappy, I'm like, as bad as your game master is, you guys are just as bad for this hobby. And they're like, well, what do you mean, Steven? I'm not the one running it bad. I'm like, no, but you sitting at his table hurts the hobby because he's only here because you're still sitting there. So you're as much of a problem for the hobby as the bad DM that you're playing under. Like you are actually an issue. Like I wish guys like you would just get the fuck up off of a bad DM's table and walk away. Because if you did, if you said to yourself, like me, had the same principle, I'll go watch grass grow instead of playing in a bad game, it improves the hobby. You'll get better gaming in the long run when you finally find something because you raise the standard. But if we make excuses for all kinds of false bullshit reasons why you're sitting at that table, like, and then what happens when people sit at tables like that, instead of saying we should get up and leave so that game master is pressured to go away, they want game designers to make games that will control that game master. But the bad part is those same games will actually handcuff the good game master. So the good game master who's creative, he could do a better game for you with less restrictions. When you put restrictions on the game, that game master is now tied up. Like the quality of their game, trying to run a game with restrictions, drops. So the restrictions you put on the game to control the bad guy ends up hurting the good game master. And that seems to happen 100% of the time. Every game that comes out with restrictions takes a good game master and it hurts the quality of the game they can offer you. So it's like, dude, it's such a common sense way of controlling it. Just if you got a bad game, what's your choice? Either no game or a bad game. I say no game. And if you don't have the nerve to do that, and here's what's worse. The same people that will sit there and support bad game mastering or bad players, they are the first little fucking cunts to sit there later on and cry about the bad game mastering and the bad playing. I'm like, no, it's because of you that we have it. I have the right to complain. I do something about it. You don't, but the loudest voices that complain about the problems are the people that cause the problems. I'm like, how many tables have you sat at with a bad game master? A lot. But you complain about bad game masters the loudest, right? Yeah. Well, the bad game master is here because of you. Like without you behaving the way you have, we wouldn't have the problem. So I always tell people, what are they here for? Like you get a lot of YouTubers here too that are weird about things because they're more about their growth on YouTube and everything else at the expense of the hobby. I just say, like, look, I want to grow on YouTube. I want to get somewhere with YouTube, but I'll take a hit on YouTube at rapid growth because I'll say what I think helps the hobby first, 99% of the time, right? I'll actually put the quality of gaming ahead of my growth. And when you can explain things as well as I do, you have impact. And when you're serious like me, you have impact. You have more impact than people that just want to sound like they know what they're talking about. It's really good to know what you're talking about instead of being like most of the old school tabletop role-playing game YouTubers here and just talking like you do. Or one of the recent arguments I heard from a YouTuber was on a stream, and I don't want to mention his name because I have no issues with the guy, but it's just like he did the whole argument from authority. It's like, look, well, if they have this many followers and they have something to say about YouTube, don't listen. Like if a guy has more, listen to the guy who has more. I'm like, it's just an argument from authority, dude. Like, fuck off with that simple-minded shit. There's lots of reasons guys might not have the following, but still have the credibility and the intelligence to see something about anything they're taking part in better than guys that have more than them. I mean, I could be a guy who's been around for 10 years, and there's multitude of reasons why I have the following I have. And there's a guy who's been here for a short time who might have like 10 times the amount I have. But if you ask that guy for advice about YouTube, he wouldn't know. He wouldn't be able to tell you shit about nothing. It's what you call simple-minded, stupid thinking. Right? Really fucking dumb people like the argument from authority type of thing. It's like they don't see nuance. They don't see complexity. And it's like, dude, if you think just because somebody has something or somebody has a degree that the guy without the degree can't be right and the guy with the degree oh, he's never wrong. You're a fucking fool. I know plenty of guys with degrees who get on the thing that they're mad or whatever they focus on, they're wrong on it. And I know guys without degrees on the same subject who will be right over them. And it's not just a few times. This is fucking often. This is fucking often. Often enough. The idea that you go like, well, if I hear somebody talking about YouTube and he has 1,000, but the other guy has 8,000, so I listen to the guy with 8,000. There's a good chance, because given how careless people go on YouTube, that most of the time, that would actually, or at least 50% of the time, that's going to be wrong. It's going to be the stupidest fucking simple-mindedest way to fucking view anything. Stop being simple-minded. Think in nuance. Understand the reality of the person, right, that you're talking to. I'll give advice out here where I know the advice is good because I've talked to guys that have bigger followings, but for more successful communities. And I'll be like looking like, for example, guys, in the old school, I would say we have what we call an overall audience. Now, the evidence will support everything I'm saying here. That overall audience will jump from YouTuber to YouTuber. Some will stay with some will leave, but you'll see guys that used to watch you on somebody else's channel, shit like this. But there's an overall audience, right? Now, your better YouTubers in that circle of YouTubers, in that section of YouTube, they have grown that overall audience, right? That doesn't mean the overall audience is watching everybody, but that's your audience to take from for viewers. Now, when you get other guys that are not that talented coming into your circle, they can leech off you. They don't grow the overall audience. They don't appeal to more people coming in. They just leech. That's it. Now, there's nothing wrong with them existing, but they just leech. And you got to hope that when you meet somebody with talent that comes around you that has more talent or very talented YouTubers that can potentially take part in your circle, that to grow the overall audience, because people with talent can bring more people into the overall. And that means there's more people for you to try to sway from your overall audience selection. And so what you don't want to do is take these talented people coming around you and squash them. You don't want to squash your talent by making them bow the knee to you. You don't want to squash your talent by attacking them. And they'll help you grow the overall audience. What do the leeches do? The guys that will copy a lot of my content and talk and repeat what I'm saying, but maybe more poorly. I'm like, those guys are just leechers. They're just leeching. Now, I guarantee you what I'm saying is accurate no matter what size my YouTube channel is. And so if you want to do, and you'll notice if you don't grow that overall audience, growth for you in a certain part of YouTube, you'll reach a certain point and then you're not going further. And some people don't always count them as being part of your circle either. Because some people can just be just on the outside of your circle, and just because they're growing to say 13 or 14,000 doesn't mean the people they're bringing to their channel is joining your overall audience. So they could be leeching off you too while they grow their own personal audience, but the new people they're bringing in is not joining your overall audience. So it could be certain guys that are sort of out on the fringe, like not on the fringes, but they would be somewhat separate from you, but some of your audience goes over to them. Right. And then they grow. They actually grow. You'd be like, well, they're growing the overall audience. I'm like, no, actually, a lot of guys are bringing to their channel at 13,000, 14,000. A lot of their new guys are not actually going to join your overall audience. They're too far out of your circle. Like you're not connecting with them on streams and panels and that often. So if they're too separate from you, all they're doing is leeching off you. So even though they're growing, they're still not growing the overall audience. They only leech a bit off you, and that's it. It's all you. They're all just using, right? There's a more successful leech. Their success, but it's their own personal success. So when you get into a certain circle where you're doing streams or know each other, there will become sort of an overall audience. That audience only grows either when you start doing better content, because if you're just doing the same thing, it's hard to grow that overall audience. Now you just got your bubble. It starts becoming an echo chamber, or you start growing that overall audience by doing new content. It has to be new. When growth starts growing the overall audience, it has to be somebody in the circle actually really, really connected to the whole thing. So, and if you're not, if the YouTubers that are already there aren't growing that overall audience anymore, then you need new guys, not guys that leech, because they won't grow. They'll just leech off what's already there. You want YouTubers with talent, and you don't want to squash their talent by killing their how they're going to get noticed by trying to put them below you by making them take a knee. You don't want that. You want their talent to shine. And then sometimes if you do have talented guys, if you don't keep them connected enough to your circle, or they take a time out on YouTube, again, there goes that overall audience. And some of that audience will shrink, especially with the old school, because with the old school, we all got to be honest. There's a reason it's called old school, and that means a portion of the audience is going to age out or pass away every year. It's not just, oh, this time of the year they don't come around. Forget all that. That's just excuses for how people, they don't want to live in a delusion about how viewership is. Anybody can view it anytime. The idea of you got seasons of viewership on YouTube, that's bullshit. That's a lie, right? What you got is you got a shrinking audience that you need to keep growing. And the old school has an extremely shrinking audience because we have a lot of people that age out, right? And they can age out through the year. They can age out before the next year. A lot of guys age out. And if they don't age out, they pass away, right? So you're going to notice a shrinking number, shrink. And it's how many new people are you bringing in? And that either has to be based off really wildly new content hitting big, or you got to be bringing in new YouTubers that grow that audience. So that's real. And if you think I'm full of shit, go around to communities on YouTube that have people that are doing streams together, stuff like this, and their little circle, and they'll talk to them. They'll tell you exactly what I'm telling you. They have an overall audience. When new people come around with talent, they will not shun that person usually. They'll be users, they'll be leechers. You got to watch out for them. But for anybody with any credibility, they'll let somebody else shine. Why? Because that new shining person in their circle grows the overall audience, and they can get people coming to their channel from that new growth, right? So it's like, yeah, okay, so what if that YouTuber is going to do a little better than you? And maybe he's a bit hotter than you. Doesn't matter. Your channel starts to grow from the growth of overall audience. You will benefit from letting that guy shine. So don't let your ego and your attempt to control a certain part. Another thing is you can't control what people are going to say all the time either. So when you get very talented people, individuals come in, they're going to think differently than a lot of people in your circle. And you always got to be open to change. That's what other YouTube groups have told me. Like, you got to be open, because sometimes you can have sort of everybody sort of agreeing, and then some guy with extreme talent comes along and he does not agree, and he has to be given the right to be able to speak. And you can't squash him, because if you squash him, you can't grow the overall audience. And understand, what you want as YouTubers will not be the same as what the audience wants. So if you ask your audience for opinions, they'll be like, no, just keep it as it is. But we know the outcome. That's not what the YouTubers want. The YouTubers want growth. So the audience will not concern themselves with that usually. So their opinions will be almost nothing against them, but it's almost best to sort of go like, guys, I get why you don't care. You don't get a dog in the fight, right? But the YouTubers do. And then you got to watch out for YouTubers that are full of shit. Like I say to YouTubers, why lie? Because you put yourself in the corner. Like, there'll be guys like, I'm on here for fun. Dude, you have a scheduled stream. You do certain content in a certain way. You're on here to grow. Like, just fuck up and stop lying to people. Because when you say you're on here for fun, it means you don't care about growing. So if you say you're on here for fun, but then all your actions are to just grow on YouTube and get bigger, right? It's because here's what happens. They're scared to say they failed. A lot of guys get on here trying to do YouTube, and if they don't succeed at their actions, it means they failed. They can't just excuse it away as having fun. It means they failed. I take the risk. I might fail, right? But I'm very honest and I'm very real about that. I don't get on here and lie to people like a lot of the other YouTubers do and say I'm here for fun so I can avoid saying I failed later. Dude, if you failed, you failed. Just have the nerve to be honest. And the less honest you are with the audience, the more you influence the audience to not understand what most. Well, Steve, why don't you just on here for fun? All the other guys are. No, they're not. They're lying to you. You've been brainwashed because you believe lies, right? I'm just being real with people. At least I'm honest. You can say you don't agree with me or you don't like me, but difference is I at least tell you the truth. It again doesn't mean I tell you everything about me. A lot of people just assume and fill gaps in when they try to figure out who I am. Like, dude, you don't really know who I am. But like the audience here, I like a lot of guys in the audience. But if I said, "Do I know who Miles is?" No. Do I know everything about Black Rose? No. There's things about us as individuals that might shock each other. What I just go is, as long as you're not harming kids or done something very bad, I'm open, right? And I'll connect with anyone. But it's a risk you take when you're meeting people like this. It's just how it has to be. Like, it's just some people connect with me that they like. I've had YouTubers and audience members over like my decade plus on here on YouTube, well over a decade now. I mean, probably closer to like going on 15 years or something, to be honest. They'll connect with me finally personally outside of YouTube, and they're like, "Holy fuck, man, you are wow." I'm like, "Oh, nice to meet you. Now you get to meet the real me." And I'm very careful with who I'll connect with because I got to keep secrets. Right? So, because I don't tell everyone everything on YouTube. Now sometimes I let the cat out of the hat type of thing. I've been a little bit more honest recently, but some things about me, some things, right? But I don't harm anybody, like kids or anything. So I'm not like that type of person. But do you know everything about me? It's like, no, you'll just assume you know about me. You don't know shit about me. Most people don't know. And how could they know I'm a YouTuber? You, what you do see is what you get. It is real. I do have opinions as the gamer I am. I do have the experience. I'm not lying to you about that. It's just I don't let everything out at once, right? And I let people fill the gaps and perceive me however they want. All right. I remember interacting with the Bro OSR like 2 or 3 years ago. Some of the first things for about like 2 months, I had a bunch of the guys in there calling me like a snowflake and calling me a communist and a lefty. And I never tried to correct them for a while. I just let them go on. Okay, sure. I never corrected it. I never said anything. I just like, so you think, right? Because I was out. It's like people are simple minded about who you are. So I'm like, yeah, sure, think that. You go ahead and think all you want. That you don't know me. But they found out. They found out. I remember some of the YouTubers sort of remembering details when guys were on the panels, going to their panels, calling me a left wing snowflake, and finally it's like, no, I actually know Steven's stance on that. It's like, I'm like, oh. That's exactly it. Well, that's exactly it. But it's like trying to tell people. So when you're assuming about somebody, it can make you really simple minded and stupid. Right? You're assuming the wrong things. Terrible, stupid things. Okay, guys. Okay. Give me a second. I'll be right back. It's what you call drinking a few monsters before a stream finally caught up with me. I'm like, okay, yeah, I got to go take care of that problem. Boom. So yeah, monsters will be good. Bathroom, pizza time. Oh, exactly. And even here I'm talking about games. So it's just like you just by DMs or underused by DMs. What the See, it depends on what edition you're talking about too. And underused, again, it's such a general question, Miles. Oh my. I don't think there's a right answer for it. Let me just think of monsters I think some people may be underused or how they use them. Like as much as people have realized a bit more lately, especially in the last year or so, about kobolds, I remember a lot of dungeon play when I was young, where the new AD&D, these are the raw guys, raw AD&D 1E raw guys, as raw as they were. You think they would have learned something, but a lot of raw AD&D 1E tournament type of DMs did not use many kobolds in dungeons. I was like, that's weird. Why would the guys who do what they want to do be using these more consistently when kobolds are well known to be related to dungeon play, right? Um, and traps, stuff like this. Or it's not even just underused monsters, it's how they're underused. Like imagine if you do see a DM using goblins and kobolds often, say with dungeons or whatever, where there's almost no traps in the forest, no traps in the dungeon. I'm like, and you're going through certain areas where they would not be traveling normally, so they would be looking to trap you if you try to come up towards their camp, and there'd be signals. A roper encounter, jeez. Probably haven't seen one in years. I mean, from another game master. To be honest, even though they were sort of not effectively new with AD&D 1E, there wasn't a lot of people go, what did AD&D 1E bring in? I'm like, not a lot of new because there's a lot experimented with Greyhawk. When you look at new mostly from AD&D 1E, say, because that's what we're talking about tonight, and it's more about like certain forms of attacks, the way monsters were used with miniature gameplay, like more area effect and um, strategic use in a certain way changed up a bit. It went from simple to more complex. And you might think that is leaning towards wargaming, but actually, wargaming is way more simple. The complexity was leaning away from wargaming, ironically. But again, miniatures is still default gameplay, though you could use a lot of this new area effect stuff with theater of the mind as well, which is still what the majority did if they did it with chips or something, right? So a lot more gameplay changed with AD&D 1E than say just bringing in new monsters. Because if you really want to get accurate, it doesn't mean you might not find all the monsters in Beckme or OD&D, but you'd find a lot of monsters more specific with Greyhawk experimented with. So there wasn't always as many new monsters coming in as there was changing gameplay with monsters. A lot of changing gameplay with monsters. Uh, that's mostly, and that was from what I looked into, which I find interesting, is the adjustment to gameplay with monsters more than interesting trying to examine which monsters were new, right? As far as Roper, not many, because the complexity went out the door, especially with AD. I hate to say it, I hate to keep going back to AD&D 1E, Amble, but AD&D 1E brought a lot of these raw by the book DMs, where the DM is no longer king, the book is. These are the tournament DMs that took tournament play and took it home as if it's the way you're meant to run it at your home table, which is not how you're meant to run it at your home table. But they did, because a lot of guys that were not capable of DMing did raw. Oh, blue. Yeah. I love that too. Sometimes you just there's a lot of monsters there where you can take stats that are already built in and you could just put something over them and then make some adjustments. So it's a lot easier doing that. I'd rather just sometimes I would take a monster idea, take a monster that already exists that is similar, you know what I mean, and use that stat set for that and some of the abilities, and then make some minor adjustments to make the new monster, right? It was a lot easier. But yeah, I would do the same thing. I do a lot of customization, especially for areas or uniqueness, or sometimes I would have it that you might see experiments or creatures that deformed versions, or sometimes I do different goblins. Like I had goblin tribes where it'd be like, here's a different goblin tribe, and I'm not going to have the same stats with these guys. They might even perform differently than the normal ecology, so I'd make changes, right? Some might even be more immune to poison, when some had, goblins aren't exactly known for that, but it depends on the tribe and the area too. Area really affects how creatures are. Like I sort of treat goblins and some creatures like animals. Like, you might find a snake in a certain environment that environment doesn't make that type of snake poisonous. You're really not going to find too many poisonous snakes. But if you're out in certain areas, you'll find all kinds of poisonous snakes. So what if I sort of treated goblins like that, right? What if I had it where some could be immune, some could be doing certain things? It really does. Just common sense. But you still get to make adjustments. You just don't just play copycat. That is boring, right? So I always say it's good to take what's already there, but then make adjustments, because the reason I say take what's already there is what's already there has been adjusted into gameplay, right? So it saves you from needing to experiment a lot, if you know what I mean. Like it's a lot quicker to get something in that's going to work for you more often. Like that's already adjusted to gameplay. So I stake most of the stats as something similar. Well, it's already gameplay. Now I can make some minor changes, and even if I fall into a problem, I can fix that. It doesn't take much to adjust back. When you make a monster from scratch, well, you'll find that if you try that, you'll just find monsters that already sort of have the same gimmicks. So you realize you could have just took a monster that already existed. But I say take monsters that exist because they're already adjusted to gameplay, right? So that's really important. Really important. That's sort of why I say do that. Seems like a simple way, but it is, but it's also a good way, because you just got to think those monsters in the books are already, you would hope in most cases, that they're already game tested. So to just take them and put the thing on it just means more likely your monster will work. Right. And that's the important detail here, is getting a new idea to work, right? But don't be just copycat. Like it's almost pointless just to have a goblin with a different suit on. Like you don't want to cosplay monsters. I would be opposed to that. So you definitely want to make changes to definitely make sure it's unique from the changes, but don't cosplay. Like if you're just going to use a goblin, if you're going to use a goblin. But I like the idea of what Miles was asking me, and some of the other guys mentioned. It's taking them and making where I can make different creatures depending on where they're at, environment wise. Different. It's like goblins over in the desert. Well, if that goblin bites you, you can get poison, right? Oh, 1,000,000%. I take that into even how I gameplay with them, Annabelle. I think it's really important to think common sense, because if you just think about just on paper like a video game, the game sort of breaks down. I like the idea that I can put up a strong monster against you, but if that monster is cocky, like if I put a personality in, maybe that monster doesn't attack you every round. Maybe it most off at you. Maybe you have opportunities. Maybe on paper, what seems would have wiped you out, you have an opportunity against. It could be like the goblin could just kill you straight out if it's a video game, if you're down. But what if that goblin pisses on you and walks away? You're not dead. It's humiliating, but you're not dead. It's and then some goblins might even approach you like you say you're. It depends on how you're getting approached. It can even work against them. But I love putting personality in the monsters, or like you said, having a good leader where, okay, maybe, and sometimes it could even be the other way, Amble, where you have a bad leader, where he is sending in his guys carelessly to get fucking slaughtered, right? Usually you don't have leaders that are going to be that successful. So that guy's probably broken down or he's been kicked out, or there's a reason that piss poor leader is even in their situation. But that could be the case. Sometimes it could be like you said, suddenly the orcs are way more dangerous because the way they approach combat, it's not just based on what's on paper, it's how they go about it. Right? It's like I remember this killing a group. I talked about it recently. But it's how it can just change combat, like small things. Like imagine you got a group of hobgoblins coming in at you. One has a bow. One has a bow. And as the group of the others with swords or whatever move in to fight you, one drops to one knee, takes the bow off, and starts firing. Players don't appreciate how that can just wipe the boat. Like, okay, you should be aiming at him, but if they don't aim at that archer is going to get free shots. Oh, the thief is sneaking in from the side. You're coming in with the wrong guy. Right? You're taking down the few of the swordsmen. Seems good, but he's. So I like your take on it, Amble. Amble has the right approach as a DM. See complexity and nuance in monsters, and sometimes that can work for them or against them, but you have fun, right? Oh, extreme, and that's why I love it that it's a mind game. That's what turns this into a mind game. Is when you have players that can realize it doesn't matter what your levels are, guys. It's how you approach combat. And then I hope that they pay attention to these realistic things, not video game, because we're not, what Amble's talking about here is nuanced thinking, realism, is take advantage. Take advantage. Sometimes even the smart moves can be used against certain groups, right? But I do love that. I love the mind game. I love paying attention. I love giving personalities because it makes the game way less boring. You're never going to get to the same encounter with goblins in my game. I'm never going to have the same two groups of goblins that you're going to encounter. Some might be very aggressive. Some might be half-assed, right? And like Amble will say here, if you get a smart leader, some could be very clever. Some, it could be where you only see so many coming out at you at once. But then as you get so far into the fight, more coming out on the other sides of you. Like, wait, there's more coming behind now? We're like 4 rounds in. Yeah. Oh, shit. Right? You start realizing you might be in more trouble. But if you're going to be nuanced or complex, you can't always be where it's just in favor of the monsters. Like, to me, real nuance and complexity is to make sure you balance it out. Sometimes it is the monsters being stupid, right? Or the enemies being dumb, right? Sometimes it's smart. So you got to sort of mix it up. It depends on, but try to bring that complexity in. If you feel like you're being repetitive, I always say just pay attention. Pay attention. Remind yourself of last so many things you've done. Like, am I just doing benefits again? Okay, I got to do something different. You got to get on yourself to make changes. Like, for it to become random and real nuance and real complexity, it's just keep yourself fucking in check. It just doesn't take that much. If you don't bother trying to consider what you're doing, like if you're on the 10th group and it's been like 2 years and it's always a benefit to the monsters, dude, okay, you went from nuance complexity to you're back to board game. Because now it's always in favor of them. Right? So you've turned something good and you've simplified it too much. So by simplifying it too much, you've now turned that thing into a very basic, that's all you do every time. So then you got to sort of backtrack. Sometimes it's got to be against them. Sometimes it's for them. It doesn't always have to be back to back where it's, 4 against, but it's like, it could be 2 or 3 in a row that you're against the monsters are acting stupid. and then you put one in. Just make sure it's not like fucking 8 in a row. That it's always this one way with them, right? So all you got to do, you bring some randomness in, and you got to understand that's random enough, right? But keep yourself in check. It's like anything else when you're doing combat. People like, I like to do, explain what happened to you when you take damage. Well, is it always the arm getting hit? Well, that's repetitive. How do you avoid it? Dude, just keep yourself fucking in check, dude. You got to remind yourself, like I've done the arm thing like the last 8 times. Okay, that gotta fucking stop. Like now you got to stop. You got to forcefully stop yourself from being repetitive, and that's me. All you got to do is to avoid repetitive nonsense is to pay attention. People are like, man, I don't want to be repetitive. Well, then pay attention. That's all it takes is just fucking pay attention. Pay attention, and you'll be fine. You won't be repetitive. If you are careless, you'll be repetitive. That's all that happens there, right? You don't want to be repetitive. You just pay attention. People make things sound more difficult than they are. It's just if you bother to pay attention to what you're doing, you'll know. You'll know. You'll be able to avoid repetitive nonsense, right? That's where and you just got to know that not everything has to be, oh, it's arm this time, chest next time, arm this time. No. It's okay if a few fights there, it's a lot of arm cutting or this cutting when you're giving details. It just can't be like fucking 8 or 10 times in a row. Yeah. Sorry about any background noise. I have family visiting today, but now gone back. That's good. Good. So, but yeah, that's the situation. Right. You got to avoid repetitive. So when I hear people talk about like, you don't want to be, you'll probably be repetitive if you do this. I'm like, dude, not if you pay attention. Not if you pay attention. I've been doing this for decades. Not if you pay attention. Yeah, you can. No, that's boring. That's boring. That's fucking piss boring, dude. I do look. Sometimes I even think that's a DM trying to overwhelm me on purpose, like as if he's looking at the game like you versus him. I'm like, just don't do that. Especially if you have a smaller creature fighting, it makes sense when attacks hit something like the leg more. Yeah, but sometimes it can be stabbing up into the gut, right? It's okay to do it 2 or 3 or 4 times in a row on the leg, but just don't go 8, 10 times. Right? This is how you start getting away from overkill repetitive. Right? So I'm with you, Miles. There's nothing wrong with things that make sense. But here's another thing I do in D&D that is very unique. I got this from running Rollmaster. I don't need a chart or anything. I just do this. I just automatically do it. So I like in Rollmaster that the fight can be over before you're even dead. Because in Rollmaster, you can take damage to the leg and you get minuses. Right? Like you can be hacked up before you're dead and be like pretty much almost crippled out of the fight. And so I look at, old school, you got a choice. You can either, and they do tell you it's optional how you look at hit points. So you got to understand it's optional. And even if they told me it wasn't, I would have given a fuck. They can suck my dick. But Rollmaster taught me this. It's like you could look at hit points like exhaustion, where when you get down to 0, finally you hit, and that's the real hit that kills you. Right? So you're just getting exhausted. There's no real physical damage overall in combat. Or you can relate hit points to the body. I do that to the body. So I don't do a chart. I feel it out. So if I tell you take damage and I say you get cut in the arm, well, okay, that might just be a cut in the arm. But if I tell you get really hacked up in the arm, that's a minus with that arm. Now it could be you got a sword with that. You're attacking with that arm. Okay, now you get a -1 to your attack. Yeah. If it's your leg, especially if somebody's doing a cold shot on you or something, you get your leg hacked up. Now it could be a minus onto your armor class. People are like, yeah. If you get hit in the head, I could just give you I could be giving you a minus to your attack and your armor class from just fucking being your hits getting smashed in. And people are like, you just do that? I'm like, yeah, I just do that. Yeah, you just got to make sure you're not being repetitive when you do stuff like this. Like, it won't always be every attack is going to be on the arm or something, but I definitely do consider your body's getting hacked up as you're losing hit points. And you might say, well, how do you look at hit points, Stephen? Do you see hit points as like if you have more hit points, your body gets bigger? No. At level 1, to me, 1 hit point of damage is more than 1 hit point of damage at level 8. So here's how I look at hit points. And I look at it from my own Neo TTRPG system the same way too. Hit points has to do with how well you can avoid damage. So the more you get, the better you are avoiding it. So, 1 hit point of damage at level 8 is not as much physical damage because you're better at avoiding nastier damage, right? But at level 1, with less experience, it's easier to hit you and cause more physical damage. So 1 damage, because you have less hit points, will do more damage to your body percentage-wise, say. So I sort of look at it as you get more experience, you get better at avoiding damage, like avoiding damage that really hurts you. That's exactly it, Amble. You got it. That's exactly what I pretty much do. Like, that's 100%. See, there's not many guys that are out there that do DMing like that anymore. Like, that's, you might be able to appreciate my criticism with guys that run it by raw AD&D 1E with modules. Like, I like the sandbox. Like, look, it's not about attacking people, but it's my issues always run in the guys that will talk really big, like a big game. And I'm like, okay, you run it by the book, run it raw, right? Yeah, I'm like, you run modules, right? Okay, so I'd ask him, when Gary writes in the Dungeon Master Guide that the DM is king, do you think he's talking to the tournament DM doing it raw with the module? Or is he talking to me? Because he's describing me or describing you? Because what does raw, like I always say, what does raw mean? It means if you run it raw and the players have an expectation of raw, the book has more authority than the guy running the game. Game being slow, then action may involve some craziness to get the momentum fired up. Well, action is just going to be action. I don't think of the game paces. Look, things are going to come at you. I leave it to players, but I'll push. I'll push with NPCs in the scene. I'll get things going as much as I possibly can give pushes. But I do tell players, it's on you. I'll put pressure. Here's what I do, Amble, personally. I create pressures. That means there's always a reason to move forward. I learned this from Traveler. It's a really, really great gimmick for any game master, especially in a sandbox. Pressures are there's you need to keep introducing reasons why players should be moving ahead with their characters and doing something. So just you start the game with maybe they owe some money they got to pay off, and they only have so many days to do it or a few weeks, right? There could be pressures where they got to get moving on the road now and make things happen. Like, I'm always trying to introduce small pressures from NPCs to whatever into the game over time. So it gives players the incentive to keep wanting to move forward and keep feeling pressure to move forward. It's even on their own decisions. It's keep applying pressure or even take their own pressure pushing. Like, well, you guys said you would do this in so many days, right? Okay. So that can be very helpful, especially in a sandbox where you're wondering, like, players are just sitting around doing nothing. I'm like, do they feel any pressure to do something? No, dude. They're just sitting there. I'm like, that's probably your issue right there. Find pressures and introduce pressures all the time. Pressures could be minor things, like to get something done right away, to not sit around and wait, right? And then what needs excitement? See, also as a DM, you got to look at a scene. So say you have like 5 players at your table. If they're all interacting at the campfire and they're all having fun, you got to remember as a DM, it is really a good thing. It does help. But you got to remember as a DM that your fun, if anything else, is just that the game is going smoothly. So never, like when players are all interacting with something, never think the game is slow. I always say this to game masters I'm teaching. I do teach a lot of guys. I say everyone's interacting at the campfire. You might say, well, I don't want that to drag out. I'm like, are they all interacting and having a good time? Yeah. Well, there's nothing being dragged out. Like, look, if they have the 30 minutes to talk, what I'm saying is you let that happen. As long as activity's happening where they're all having fun and there's character development, there's talking, and there's interacting with the scene. If all the characters are interacting with the NPCs in the town, never ever get it in your mind, man, I gotta make some action here. I gotta push them along. No, you don't. But man, it can't be the whole session where they're talking. Yes, it can. The whole session could be social interaction in the town. I don't care if you, even if it's like, man, would you spend 6 or 8 hours doing that, stupid? It's the players are doing it, dude. It's the pressure comes from when players aren't participating in something, right? That's when you want to suggest it. If you can throw in a push it, or it doesn't take away from other players either. You don't want to take away. To say they're doing some social interaction, but a couple guys have gotten quiet, but they're not having an issue going around with the others. What you do is now it doesn't have to go 8 hours, but you want to make sure the players that are trying to get some active things done get it done, right? But you want to pace it along. It goes from them traveling and talking to, okay, you went from the merchant thing to you walk over here, you jump the time really quick. Okay, you get over to this building. Doesn't mean you want to take away the social interaction, but now it went from casual, they're talking in character, moving from one place to now you can jump. Well, if they're enjoying it, just let it go. Like you don't have to worry. It only gets worrisome when they're not interacting and enjoying. Because as long as they're enjoying, in a way, as a game master, you should be enjoying. Your job as a game master is to enjoy every part of the game. Like I don't know, like I've heard of game masters out there that mostly like doing action. I'm like, that's not a role playing game, dude. You were in a board game. As a game master, I like social interaction. I enjoy it all. I like social interaction. I like the combat. I like the traps. I like the out here searching for the thing. I love it all. I don't have a personal preference at all. Like I love everything. And to me, anybody who steps up to that role in the game should be the guy, especially that is going to give 110% in all areas, right? So as long as players are enjoying and taking part, fine. If I notice players aren't complaining, what I'll do is I'll start speeding up. It's now you're not just walking over to the merchant, you're at the merchant. Like we jump. You jump over here just to get some of the stuff done. I don't want to take away, but I want to speed it up. Now we get to the point where I can, this is pace control. Amber will understand what I'm saying by this. This is pace control. If pacing is, if they're enjoying the walk and talk, you let them walk and talk. If they want to, that's all it really is. You want to know when they're enjoying. When you notice, what you hope is good players that are starting to less take part is they're patient, right? That's all it is. And you just got to also know that you got to have patient team players where you got players that as long as you as a game master do not keep holding up too long on the social interaction at the point they start getting vague on it, you start pushing it a bit. It's pace control. You're letting things get done, but now you're pace controlling. They might even pick up back on the conversation, and you let them. It doesn't mean they want to either. You got to read that room too sometimes. If they're being quiet and not all just participating in the walk and talk, fair enough. That's a slow down point. So once you notice one or two players slowing down, that you pick up a pace a bit. Now you jump, jump, jump. Doesn't mean they won't still take part in social interaction with NPCs, but they're still slowing it down overall. So now it's like, okay, so your pace picking up is okay because they're okay with it. All right, now they're not slow walking and talking. They're jumping. They understand these guys got to get this done, but they'll participate. That's good. I like players that are still making the effort, even when things are starting to dry out. But then you get to the point where, okay, you guys are done doing all your trades, talking all this. Do we want to start moving? Like, it's ask questions, pride a bit, right? Because the players that want to move on, but they're playing very patient with their team, will clearly start saying yes. And if the team feels like they've gotten in their interaction with the right guys, everybody on the team starts getting influenced by that. That's good. Now you can move on to getting on the road or getting into doing other things. But it really is, game mastering is such a, as these guys would know, say, Gamble and Black Rose and other people, it is a very, you got to learn the craft well. And then everything just sort of becomes going with the flow. That's a good way of putting it, isn't it, guys? Going with the flow. There's a flow and you got to pick up on it. And your job as a game master is to always pay attention to all players, right? Right. That's part of the gimmick. So you got to know when people are really active and when activity starts slowing down, and then you got to start opening doors, right? And you can't be simple. Can't be you run it one way the whole way through. And that's the way I am. I run long campaigns, guys. So to me, I never try to worry about how one session is going to go. I just worry about if it feels right, you do it. If it fits the situation, you just do it. I never worry about balancing out a session. That's why I always try to tell new players coming in, don't take one session as that's how it is all the time. This is just what worked for this session. It's if you enjoyed it, you enjoyed it. That would be the main aim of it. The main aim of the session always to make sure players are getting the most out of it, being challenged, enjoying, running into the hardships. They say the game is all about having fun. I'm like, well, there's parts that are fun, right? Parts that are meant to be challenging. So somebody might say the game is meant to be about fun. I'm going to start in a second here. I'm like, even that's a nuanced answer because it's complex. Because is it always about fun? Well, I'm like, what about that night you're going through a place and you lose fights or you don't do well in fights, you fall into traps. Look, I want you to be on edge. I hope you're not bored. But would I say every single gaming session is going to be fun? Not always. Doesn't mean it's bad. But, you have a bad night falling into traps and stuff. You could probably come back at me and say, well, it wasn't like a terrible experience. I would hope a player's always going to tell me that. But, man, it sucked. Failing all the way through. That could be pretty shitty. So the conversations around gaming, once you're a good game master, once you're an experienced game master, you realize a lot of the conversations that happen around the hobby around here are too simple. It's not to dish on people, just way too simple of a view of what we're doing. I'm like, it's very complex. Okay, guys, here we are. We're going to start. Start time. Who created the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1E monsters and what inspired them? That's where we're going to start. The AD&D First Edition Monster Manual from 1977 was primarily the work of Gary Gygax. While many monsters had appeared earlier in OD&D, its supplements and TSR publications, Gygax selected, rewrote, and expanded, standardized, and in some cases created monsters specifically for AD&D. The finished book reflects his vision of what AD&D should be, what Advanced Dungeons & Dragons should be. Gary Gygax's Greyhawk campaign. One of the greatest sources of inspiration was Gygax's own Greyhawk campaign. Many monsters spent years being tested by the players before ever appearing in print. During actual games, Gygax refined their abilities, adjusted their difficulty, and determined how they fit into a fantasy world. By the time they appeared in the Monster Manual, many had already gone through extensive real-world playtesting. This is one reason the Monster Manual feels remarkably polished for its time. Building on earlier D&D. The Monster Manual was not written entirely from scratch. Its contents drew from several earlier TSR publications, including the original OD&D box set, the OD&D supplements, particularly Greyhawk, Blackmoor, and Eldritch Wizardry, the Strategic Review magazine, and Dragon magazine. Gary Gygax's home Greyhawk campaign, rather than replacing these sources, and Gary Gygax's home Greyhawk campaign, rather than replacing these sources, the Monster Manual gathered, revised, and standardized them into a single hardcover reference. The Strategic Review and Dragon magazine. Before Dragon magazine existed, TSR published the Strategic Review, where several monsters made their first appearance. When Dragon replaced it, the magazine became an important testing ground for new ideas. Gary Gygax frequently introduced new monsters, revised existing creatures, expanded monster lore, observed player feedback, refined monsters before adding them to AD&D. So this all happened through like Dragon magazine. Many monsters first appeared in these magazines before becoming official entries into the Monster Manual. Mythology and folklore. A major source of inspiration came from mythology and folklore around the world. Many creatures were adapted from Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Celtic folklore, medieval bestiaries, and Middle Eastern legends, also Europe folklore. Classic creatures such as Medusa, Minotaur, Chimera, Cockatrice, Harpy, Hydra, Lamia, and the Pegasus were not inventions of D&D. Gygax adapted them into a consistent game system with defined abilities, statistics, and roles within the world. Sword and sorcery literature. The fantasy novels Gary Gygax admired heavily influenced monster design. Among the most important authors were Robert E. Howard, Fritz Leiber, Jack Vance, Michael Moorcock, H.P. Lovecraft. These writers inspired monsters that felt ancient, mysterious, alien, dangerous, rather than simply existing as enemies to defeat. Science fiction influences. Although AD&D is a fantasy game, science fiction also left its mark. Some monsters resemble alien life forms, psychic organisms, hive creatures, parasites, strange extraplanar beings, however you want to put that. These influences help make AD&D monster collection feel more imaginative than relying solely on traditional mythology. Wargaming experience. Gary Gygax's background in historical miniature wargaming influenced how monsters function during combat. Rather than making every creature fight the same way, monsters were designed to fill different battlefield roles. Some excelled as ambushers, flying threats, shock attackers, defense guardians, spellcasters, and commanders. This encouraged DMs and players to change tactics from one encounter to the next. Some wargamers said there was a little bit too much with that stuff. They said that was getting more into the complication of who the monsters were rather than trying to make them just tactical. But if you read back on TSR and Gary Gygax, this is what TSR was claiming right at the time. A new philosophy of monster design. Perhaps the greatest intervention wasn't creating entirely new monsters. It was changing how monsters were presented. Earlier versions of D&D often treated monsters primarily as obstacles. AD&D presented them as living parts of the world by describing habitats, cultures, social organizations, behavior, intelligence, and ecology, and relationships with other creatures. This helped transform monsters from collections of statistics into believable inhabitants of a living fantasy setting. The AD&D 1E Monster Manual wasn't simply a collection of new creatures. It gathered ideas developed over several years, refined them through extensive playtesting, organized them into a consistent format, and expanded their lore in ways that had rarely been seen in tabletop role-playing games before. Gary Gygax's work established a standard for monster design that influenced not only later editions of Dungeons & Dragons, but countless fantasy RPGs that followed. There's your fluff. We just got to get some fluff out of the way, just so people can understand, because I want people to understand where Gary and them were coming from with AD&D, right? There's a lot of influences behind it. He was very detailed. This stuff is very important to them. So if people want to understand why the Monster Manual came out before most of the other books, right? The Monster Manual was about helping define it being a real thing, not just a board game. There's parts where Gary would say from his wargaming, they made these rules for like wargaming tactical play, but a lot of wargamers were very critical about how the monsters were handled anyway. Just saying. So there's a difference between what TSR and Gary says and what I found a lot of people said at the time. But I'm just sharing with you what Gary and TSR believed about the approach. AD&D 1D monsters, what they brought beyond OD&D and BECME. When people talk about AD&D first edition monsters, it's important to make one distinction. If you compare AD&D only to the original 1974 OD&D box set, then AD&D introduced many new monsters. However, if you include OD&D supplements, the Greyhawk, Blackmoor, Eldritch Wizardry, many famous creatures had already appeared before AD&D. What AD&D truly did was collect, expand, organize, and greatly improve the presentation of the monsters. The first hardcover monster book, the Monster Manual in 1977, was the first hardcover rule book released for D&D. Instead of relying on several small booklets and supplements, DMs had a single, professionally organized reference containing hundreds of creatures. This became the model for future fantasy RPG monster books. The Monster Manual gathered monsters from the original game, its supplements, and added many creatures. Rather than forcing DMs to search through multiple books, nearly everything was collected into one alphabetical reference, making preparation and play much faster. And you can see the influence on second edition Monster Manual, where people go, "That's a great book." I'm like, well, the approach to organizing that starts here. It is an AD&D thing. Don't think of. I always try to tell people, don't think a second edition is like something other than AD&D, right? That's just nerds being picky when they try to separate the editions in that way, right? There's a huge mindset that carries over because second edition is just AD&D with changes. Right? It's just AD&D improved, in my opinion, and then made a bit more commercial friendly. Monsters became more than stat blocks. One of AD&D's greatest contributing factors was how it described monsters. Instead of simply listing combat statistics, most creatures included information, as we already talked about, from society, intelligence, behavior, organization, relationships with other creatures. Like I said, this allowed DMs to build adventures around monsters rather than simply placing them in rooms to fight. Standardized monster entries. AD&D established a consistent format for monster statistics that influence later editions. And entries commonly include armor class, movement, hit dice, number appearing, percentage in layer, treasure type, intelligence, alignment, size, special attack, special defense, magic resistance, psionic ability, where they were, where that creature would actually have it. This consistency made monsters much easier to compare and run during play. Alignment became more important. While alignment already existed, AD&D tied it much more closely to monsters. Good, evil, law, and chaos became defining characteristics of many creatures, helping DMs understand not only how monsters fought, but how they behaved and interacted with the world. This is where you start. If you're not too simple about monsters, this is where guys like me, Anvil, Zag, Black Rose, everyone that comes here, this is where you start seeing the complexity driven into the way you look at monsters. And if you were well influenced by like Gary's work here, you wouldn't just run it like a board game. Though this is where I do pick and criticize the guys that ran it raw. They run it like a board game. But it's this type of mindset that gets people like myself, Anvil, and some others here starting to look at monsters in a very nuanced, complicated way and a benefit to the game, right? Humanoid monsters became societies. Orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, gnolls, kobolds, and other humanoids received far more detail than in earlier versions. Monster entries describe tribal organizations, leaders, chiefs, shamans, as Anvil was saying earlier, lairs, population structure, typical tactics. This encouraged GMs to treat humanoids as living cultures rather than random encounters. Again, this is where you get that raw DM that steps away from all this complexity and nuance, and you get other guys like myself and others who stepped into the complexity and nuance of what you were being offered, right? There was an expanded use of psionics, richer monster ecology, new iconic monsters. Although many famous monsters originated in the OD&D supplements, the Monster Manual also introduced numerous creatures that became lasting parts of D&D. Many of these first appeared in professionally illustrated, widely contributed hardcover, helping establish them as classics that would return in later editions. Why this all matter? The greatest contributing factor of AD&D First Edition Monster Manual was not simply adding more monsters. It transformed monsters from simple opponents into believable inhabitants of a fantasy world, a living world, which is something Gary was trying to really push for. By combining consistent game statistics with lore, ecology, culture, and adventure hooks, it established a standard for monster design that influenced D&D and countless other fantasy role-playing games for decades, sadly, before WotC. WotC, AD&D 1E in the tournament play. I'm going to take a time just to pause here because I want to talk about some of the stuff I just mentioned. I know I'm going through the fluff here. Fluff is on purpose because it does give a background. Like AD&D 1E raw with module becomes WotC 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition. So when people say 2nd edition inspired 3rd edition, I'm like, no. 2nd edition actually tried to go back to nuanced thinking. 3rd edition buried its head in the raw, do-it-by-the-book gameplay of AD&D 1E tournament. Oh, I hear you. I'm hoping I'm giving some, like, why would you get the people like Anvil thinking this thinking is not by accident. If you weren't doing it by the book, but you're just influenced by being creative, because this is where Gary was aiming. He's aiming at creative people, right? If you get a creative person running the game, they're going to look at the complexity being offered and run with it. It's going to help them think in this way. If you get the raw thing for tournament style, sadly, it helped make DMs or guys just make it that guys could run the game that had no skill at all. But then instead of being creative and nuanced, you start doing exactly what the book says word for word. Well, creativity sort of bleeds out. When you get the 3rd edition, 4th edition, and 5e, we go away from nuance and complexity. 2nd edition actually tried to bring AD&D to the proper home game version. AD&D 1E, if you took the complexity, was good. Personality or behavior rather than simply set of stat blocks. Monster Manual gave us information we needed to breathe life into these creatures. That's 1,000,000% it. That's 1,000,000% it. And if you were creative, your mind could take it and run with it. And Gary was. Everybody who was running these, like the guys he was game testing with, were creative people. Gary was creative. He wanted to give you the tools. Some things are vague on purpose. You know this, Amble. Some things are vague on purpose, not hand-holding bullshit, right? It's because he wants us to think. And that's good. That's why raw, to me, is a terrible way to approach AD&D 1E or AD&D at all. Because you get too exact and you depend more on the book than your own creative thinking with these tools, with this way of trying to get you to think this way. That's why 2nd edition tries to, I actually think it does a good job. It actually tries to get back to home game, not tournament play, nuanced, creative thinking away from tournament play. Tournament play was poisonous. I sort of got the idea. I get the living world concept. The problem is Gary and them made the way they structured tournament play was to sort of kill the creativity part to make sure everyone's playing the same game. Like there's an attempt to do something that fucks up, and they even give up on tournament play. Tournament play failed. People forget this. It's like they took tournament play, some guys who sucked at DMing, and they took this raw approach and went home with it. But I'm like, yeah, because hey, the guy running it like raw. If I say be creative like a proper at home AD&D 1E DM is meant to be, most of you guys doing it raw can't do that, can you? No. What about sandboxing? Can't do that either. Most DMs that were developed by raw couldn't sandbox and couldn't be creative with the tools given. But these are great tools. If you could just bypass this stuff, you know that. And by second edition, we try to get back to it. Third edition goes back to raw rules as written. Control, everybody gets the same experience. 4E, control, everybody gets the same experience. 5E, control, everybody gets the same experience. What it does is it simplifies it gives the most simple people at your table the ability to run a game without the creativity. Right. That's sort of a weird way it clashed together. Tournament play was the worst possible thing. And I'm glad that TSR accepted the failure. The problem is so many guys latched onto this raw approach because they could not DM, right? They could only do the raw thing, buy the book with a module. And TSR realized because they had so many of these raw DMs they developed, what do? You got to sell modules to them. What do you also want to do? Keep making money off modules. So you start taking language of sandboxing out of the game. This is my money grab content video I did a few weeks ago where I'm pointing this out to people. Like, I'm not trying to attack modules. I get people like them, but I'm like, modules were a money grab, and they try to redefine sandbox gaming into the module. Because if you figure out sandbox gaming, you realize you don't need a module. So it's a money grab stick, right? But second edition, even though you'll get AD&D 1E raw DMs out there that will say second edition leads to third edition, I'm like, no, tournament style, raw and module is the thing that gives birth to third edition, fourth edition, and 5e. That's by the book. And even the pre-made adventures become regular with WotC at one point. So you get your raw pre-made adventure, raw pre-made adventure, pretty consistently going together. I'm like, that's AD&D 1E, right? And it's like Amble says, here's the personalities and all this is to give you all the tools you need for you to think. It's not telling you how, like, it doesn't tell you, can you put the good leader? It's like Amble's idea earlier about the smart shaman. That's him coming up with the idea without the monster manual or even the write-up for the monster directing him to that. It's just giving him the tools to think about it that way and the tools to be creative. And then me, him, and other guys that are creative can go, okay, we have the tools. Let's look at this in a nuanced way. What could we do? We could make the shaman leader. We could do all this stuff. Is there anywhere in the book telling us this is exactly how you do it? No. But if you're on raw, what happens? You do everything deadpan by the book. Right? So the idea, that's where you'll hear guys that are raw DMs for AD&D 1E. I run goblins this way. I have them do this. I'm like, okay, that guy just gave himself away. That's a tournament DM. And you know it right away because all nuanced thinking is gone. Right? And even when I explain nuanced thinking to that raw DM, because raw DMs do not want to be called out for what they are, he'll actually try to say, well, I rather run this. They'll actually try to degrade you, the proper dungeon master. I'm like, no, dude. You're the simple one here. You're the raw DM, and tournament style failed because of this. It failed. They actually gave up on it. So your way of actually running the game, TSR actually abandoned it. They abandoned raw tournament style before AD&D 1E was even over. How would you have reoccurring monsters that can players don't just kill on sight? It would be so cool having this beast that parties white whale. Well, it depends. It's how simple are you of a DM? That's Miles. This is very important. This is very important. It's one thing to don't have players look at you like everything's simple. With me, once you play my game, you'll be like, shit, it's his game. Like if I show you a monster that led some goblins down, say a goblin leader, some type of leader, not even the king, but just like one of his main soldiers, guards that you're seeing, you're going to see more than once. He leads in some guys to fight you, and you take him. We'll go on simple on that, right? But he's going to take off. He's actually going to jet out while you're fighting. He's going to leave, and he's going to come back again. Well, it doesn't matter how you look at him. It's how you look at whose game you're in. It's like, this is Steven's game. I don't want to just fucking, even if it's him again, I don't want to rush. I don't want to rush in Steven's game. I would have so mindfucked my players that there's never a guarantee on anything. Like you see that guy again, it's like, okay, how's he approaching us this time? Is there as many guys? Like you'll question everything. And I want to be not repetitive on purpose. I want to have some randomness in there and make sure I'm putting myself in check on repetitive experiences. And then you realize the game could be easy, could be challenging, but there's nothing for sure. I'm so all over the place that you're just like, there's nothing you can ever take to the bank. You can never trust anything you're seeing in my game. And I will mind fuck you before you get to that. But like you will be outright convinced no matter what you see, there is nothing you can count on in my game. And I'll make sure that's on purpose. I'll be random on purpose. I'll have put seeds in your mind on purpose. So first off, it's important to set a relationship with your players, and then with your game, and then with how you run it. That's a start before you worry just about the monster, before the reoccurring monster. Now, once I set it up that you can't just trust anything you see, you got to be careful. Right? Doesn't mean you can't rush, but you got to pay attention. What's going on? How many guys are with them? Boom, boom, boom. You will not just rush at anything unless you feel pressured into. Of course, that can happen. But if I've done my job right as a DM, as a game master, you won't just think you're playing a video game. You'll be like, okay, a bomb could go off this time, and you don't know. And if I played with the randomness enough, you can't count on anything. And if I made sure that's established before you see him again, like especially if you're a new player, that's the first campaign, but I've established this randomness with the way I run the game. Like you are never just guaranteed there's going to be a repetitive repeat. You will not just rush in carelessly like it's a video game. I will have established, I will have put seeds in your mind. So that's really important as a DM that you establish randomness almost on purpose. Like you want to make sure you're doing that on purpose. Like it doesn't mean you have to overkill. Wait, you got, especially with new players, they're new to me. So I have to, make sure I'm going to be it's going to be some randomness, but not random crazy, but random enough that, okay, this went this way this time. I got to remember how I done things. I got to keep myself in check, and I got to see how I do something the next time and the next time. So every time you go into an encounter, is it similar? No. Right? Is it always combat? No. Is it always something easy or no? When you see something, is it the same? No. And if he's already being defeated by you, would he just come at you the same way? I will make sure you'll assume not. If he's not coming at you the same way, boom. And the monsters react to the party's actions. Put yourself in the brain of the creatures. When the monster starts acting believably, it's immersive. Players in a big way. That's one way. But I find you got to seed the mind of the players. They got to be just convinced that nothing is take to the bank. Because even now, It doesn't mean players who have not had that seed put into their mind, they could run the fight like they're going to win again. Same way. Right? But how do they not one-shot the guy? It's can they? Can they one-shot the guy? Are they even capable of one-shotting the guy? Is that even possible? And what does that mean? Right? So it's you got to make sure you're playing, you're seeding the minds. That helps. So you have players that are convinced that, hey, I got to watch out what I'm doing here. Are they capable of one-shotting an enemy down like that? Would the enemy be putting himself in position to be taken out so easily, so clearly, so quickly? No. In most cases, no. So reoccurring and then would a reoccurring enemy like that just come at you the same way as some foolish thing? Well, it depends. I mean, it could be stupid. Reoccurring could be one-shot kill. But in my game, if you could one-shot kill the guy, it just meant that maybe he got lucky the first time. And the one-shot kill is not because you're just playing a fucking game and I'm being careless. It's because he got lucky the first time and he's an idiot. He's going to try to come at you the same way again. He's going to fucking pay a price. And sometimes it could be one-shot kill. So it's always bringing complication and then setting that, seeding the mind with things, like always making sure players don't just think the same shit's going to happen each time. Is it always going to be a challenging enemy that's recurring? So this is where I say nuance, Miles, and you got to play with it a lot. Like, it seems very complicated when I'm saying, but it's not. I'm hoping just in a general way you keep picking up on this stuff tonight, like any DM who would come by this and listen would get what I'm saying. Like, there's nothing's ever the same, and most likely, if you're going to have a reoccurring enemy that's meant to survive, if your intent is, or at least give that enemy a chance to live, like they're okay, they lost the first time, but they're coming at you again. It's how they come at you this time. Is it going to be the same way? Is there a range between you and them? Are you going to try to one-shot? What does that mean to one-shot that enemy right there? Right? Is he coming back more capable than before? Like, what if you had a spell where you can cast a spell, but you had monsters that my players fear? Well, just imagine it's like having a shaman. So, say the first time you went and fought him, you could have casted a spell on him like magic missile and killed him right away, but you didn't. You used it for other reasons. But now you're going to do it this time. What if he has a shaman or a new magical device that allows him to counter magic on purpose? And I even say with leaders or people that survive, one trick kills on them a lot of times shouldn't just be that easy, because I'll be like, well, how does a leader live in the world if everyone could just one shot kill this guy? So I'm never ashamed if you meet a boss in my game where it's like, I'm going to use sleep on him. Sleep gets countered. Well, how convenient. Yeah, that's why he's alive and not just dead right away. He wouldn't be a leader in a world where you just one shot kill everybody who you're. If it was that easy to take him out, he wouldn't be alive. So I'm never ashamed if somebody has a counter to your thing, and especially if they know that you're dangerous. Why would they come back so easily if you've already defeated them in such a way, right? So if it's meant to be a monster who is capable, you make them capable. Or at least their attempt should be capable or more capable, and they should have already seen what you're capable of. So obviously, if they know what you're capable of, they'll come back with the idea that they don't want to just line themselves up with what you're capable of doing. Right? It's like, why even get in the line of fire so easily if that's the case? All right. Monster attack ideas for AD&D 1E, expanded and popularized. One important point before we begin, and this is a note I made for you guys. Many of these attack concepts first appeared in the old D&D supplement, particularly Greyhawk, Blackmore, and the Eldritch Wizardry. AD&D First Edition did not invent most of them. Instead, it expanded, standardized, and popularized these mechanics by bringing them together into the monster manual and making them a defining feature of the game. 1, level drain. One of AD&D's most feared mechanics was level drain. Undead such as wights, wraiths, specters, vampires could permanently remove experience levels with a successful hit. While the idea existed before AD&D, the game greatly expanded its use, making level draining undead some of the most terrifying opponents in the game. Ability score drain. Some monsters attacked a character's abilities instead of or in addition to their hit points. Depending on the creature, characters could lose strength, intelligence, dexterity, constitution, and other abilities. Each monster used this mechanic differently, creating encounters where surviving the fight did not necessarily mean escaping unharmed. That's it. And I think, Amble, at the same time, I think you can justify it. Right? Like, why would a leader or somebody establish in a world where you could just one-shot all this, like these cheap gimmicks? Well, how would they survive? How would they even get by in the first place? First off, their approach should be more intelligent if they're capable. Remember, we're talking about capable, not just other things. Or, they've been leaders for a while. Well, they're not leaders because you can just take them like breathing air, right? And so to me, it's okay. You can justify. You don't want to overkill on cheapness, but it's like, hey, if you use certain type of low-level sleep magic against this guy, he might have something that makes him immune to a lot of low-level magic. So you can't just cheap shot him with a sleep spell, right? So that might make him, or he might have a new device, or the way he positions it, maybe like you bringing a shaman in who's capable of defending him and making him way more of, someone who can deal with shit. So yeah, I agree it's plot narrative, but I think you can even justify have a fallback plan. It's a reason why they're leaders, right? In essence, they protect themselves. I think both, there's a combination of truth there. I think Gamble's completely right on it. For reasons this guy should be living, but at the same time, I think you can justify it in a way that's realistic. It's like, well, why would he? So you can, boom. That's where I say some leaders, if you're going to have a stupid leader in anything, not just say a guard that keeps coming back, but like there could be nuance like this. If you have a stupid leader, it probably means they're just hanging on. They've been kicked out of the former tribe. They're not that good dealing with their own fucking people. See, stupid leaders should have sort of a failure factor where you could eventually take them out easy. Credible leaders should be treated as just that. So maybe if it's just a stupid leader who's already been kicked out of another goblin group, he was a former leader, he's taken over some weaker guys, but hey, he's left alone to fuck around a certain area. Well, if you encounter him, maybe he's going to be careless and put himself in a position to be put to sleep. And I say as a DM, at that point, you don't let narrative control him or protect him. You actually let the sleep work on him. Like in some cases, you can actually say, no, this guy's weak. So it's not plot. I'm not trying to tell a story either. Right? To me, it's just realistic of why. You consider things real. You go to realism instead of storytelling. Because we're not telling stories. Stories emerge. Like nobody's a storyteller here. Right? A Pendragon tells a story. D&D, you never tell a story. Story emerges. So to me, you always go to realism and justifying it. Realism says this could be the reason. And you should have a realistic reason. You should have a reason. Not it was story, because story is an excuse for bad DMing. That's bad DMing. Oh, why'd you protect him? I have a reason. Well, then you're a shit dungeon master. You're trash. What about plot armor for the player character? Well, or the player says, well, I played poorly, but it moved the story along. Well, you mean you played like a shit player. You're no good at the game. And your excuse is story. Nope, not good enough. So I don't let story ever be the reason for shit DMing or shit playing. So you better have a good realistic reason that matches the realism. I'm with that. And again, if we do these interesting things, what happens? A good story can emerge. Sometimes a bad story can emerge. a story emerges, right? Not a story being told, the story emerges. I appreciate that, Amble. I hope you don't take any pushback on anything as boom, but it's just I like realism. I think you can actually have all good reasons to put all this stuff in there, but I appreciate that. We're going to go into the next one, which is number 3 here. Paralyze became far more common in AD&D. Creatures such as ghouls, ghast, carrion crawlers could leave characters unable to act, turning even relatively weak monsters into deadly threats when working together. Poison with different effects. AD&D featured a much wider variety of poisonous monsters in earlier versions of the game. I do agree. I do agree. I do agree. So again, AD&D featured a much wider variety of poisonous monsters in earlier versions of the game. Depending on the creature, poison could kill instantly, could paralyze you, render victims unconscious, inflict disease, produce other unique effects. Players could no longer assume every poison worked the same way. Swallow whole. Swallow whole. Enormous monsters could swallow characters whole. Instead of simply taking damage, adventurers might find themselves trapped inside of a creature, forcing desperate rescue attempts or battles from within the monster itself. Okay. Stuff like this was awesome. You have to give it to AD&D. I don't care what anybody says. When they introduced a lot of this stuff, it's not so much new monsters or even the idea of new monsters I care. It's the gameplay they introduced. Constriction. Large serpents and similar creatures could wrap around opponents and crush them. Once caught, characters often suffered automatic damage each round while struggling to escape. Engulfing attacks. Some monsters attack by surrounding their victims rather than striking them. Examples included various oozes, slimes, and gelatinous cube creatures that engulf characters, trapping and damaging them while making escape difficult. Equipment destruction. Rust monster. Although introduced before AD&D, equipment destroying monsters became some of the edition's most memorable creatures. Instead of attacking the characters directly, monsters like the Rust monster threatened weapons, armor, shield, valuable equipment. Victory could still feel like defeat if the party lost its best gear. Gaze attacks. Simply looking at certain monsters could trigger their powers. Depending on the creature, a gaze attack might turn victims to stone, cause death, inspire overwhelming fear, charm, or control a character. Players began using mirrors, indirect observations, and careful tactics instead of charging straight into battle. This is some of the stuff that might make you keep running into the same creature and you don't want to just go running in on them. Fair effects. Some monsters attacked a character's courage rather than their body. Victims might panic, flee, refuse to fight, or lose control of the battlefield. Mental resilience became just as important as physical strength. It doesn't always happen. Charm and mental control. Powerful monsters could take control of a character's mind instead of killing them. Because here's what happens with a lot of traps in that, where you get control of everything. They actually eliminate a lot of this stuff. That's really true, Amble. Like your hint that doesn't happen, some stuff doesn't happen anymore. Or even say the DM's thinking like me and yourself and other people. That's definitely true. But there's some of the stuff where the traps couldn't control people because they think it's bad gameplay. I'm like, well, this is the stuff that should make you. Yes, I this is where I said earlier, it's nuance of the game. People say you should be having fun the game. I'm like, it's iffy because challenges can suck, right? It's failing in a challenge where your character is caught into something or controlled. It doesn't always feel fun. But this is a game. This part of the game aspect, where I actually think the negative is meant to be part of the game. It's meant to make you just want to avoid that type of trap the next time, which is play smarter, right? That's the negatives make you want to play smarter. It's like gelatinous cube. You run to a gelatinous cube. You're paying attention every other time you go through. Or something starts dripping on you and it kills you from above. Every time you're walking through, you're having your character look up. and paying attention. Old school gaming meant not everything was fun, but what you do is the idea is you learn. So if you're controlled, you'll learn. In new school gaming, the mentality is if it's negative in this way, it's not good for the game. That's the storytelling stuff that you got to be. So it's part of all that excusing stuff away because it's not good for the story if you get trapped in. Dude, no, don't. And it's or the fun factor. Some things aren't fun, like charm and mental control. Powerful monsters could take control of a character's mind. Instead of killing the party, these creatures could turn allies against one another, forcing players to solve problems without simply relying on combat. And imagine a game where, say, in 3rd edition and all that, it becomes more simplified in gameplay. The idea that you need to overcome something without just thinking, swing it, make the attack dice roll. That type of gaming started to vanish, and it's by 5e now. It's gone. Illusion and deception. AD&D became famous for monsters that disguise themselves as part of the dungeon. Creatures could resemble treasure chests, ceilings, walls, floors, rock formations. It's part of looking up or paying attention, or other ordinary dungeon features. Players learned to examine their surroundings carefully rather than assuming everything was what it appeared to be. It introduced magic resistance. Many powerful monsters possessed magic resistance, as I was talking about earlier, allowing them to ignore or shrug off spells that would normally affect other creatures. Spellcasters could no longer rely on the same tactics for every encounter and often needed to work alongside the rest of the party to overcome their opponents, like weak magic, like sleep spell. That cheap one-shot might not be any good, right? And so it's okay to think this is why this monster's not easy to take down, or this is why this thing survives over here. So it's always good. Psionic attack. Psionics first appeared in the OD&D supplement Eldritch Wizardry, but AD&D expanded the number of monsters that use psychic powers. Some creatures attack the mind directly through psionic combat, creating encounters that challenge players in ways completely different from conventional weapons of magic. Now, we got to be honest. A lot of people didn't use it. That's just true. The idea that it's meant to challenge more players in the game. True. Could it? True. For the few people that would use it, true. All this is true. But not many did. And that's true as well. AD&D made disease another major danger. Creatures such as mummies, giant rats, and other disease-bearing monsters could leave lasting consequences long after the battle ended. Surviving the fight did not always mean escaping its effects. Grappling, holding, and entrapment. Many monsters specialized in restricted movement rather than simply dealing damage. Some could hold opponents in place, pin them down, entangle them, trap them in webs or other natural restraints. Players now had to think about mobility positioning as much as attack rolls and damage. Acid and corrosive attacks. Acid became a much more prominent monster weapon. Certain creatures could corrode equipment, burn through armor, or continue inflicting damage after the initial attack. This forced players to rethink tactics and remind them that heavy armor alone could not solve every encounter. This is the type of stuff that got wargamers complaining. Because in wargaming, yes, it's complicated in all these attacks, but it's usually straightforward. The attack, shot down, kill, boom, boom. This is where you get more into role-playing combat. Like the effects go longer, last longer, effects last longer. This is where tactics do change, but it's definitely not exactly aiming towards wargaming in the same way. It doesn't mean it's not inspired by wargaming. Let's be clear. It definitely is. There's an inspiration here, but starts getting away from it. The greatest innovation wasn't any single attack. It was the monsters had now threatened far more than a character's hit points. AD&D monsters could attack experience levels, ability scores, equipment, mobility, courage, mind, resources, and long-term health. And tactical decision-making changed. Earlier versions of D&D had introduced many of these ideas, but AD&D First Edition brought them together, expanded them, and made them central to its monster design. The result was a game where surviving an encounter often meant protecting far more than just your hit points, encouraging players to think creatively, plan ahead, treat every monster as a unique challenge rather than just another fight. should all be appreciating this about AD&D. Like I sometimes people hear me criticizing Raw, and so many people in the hobby are very simple when they hear you speak and they think you're attacking a certain edition of the game. I'm like, no, I'm not attacking 1E. I am critical of the tournament play because I think that led to a lot of bad gameplay. I think the Bro OSR gameplay is from tournament. I think it's terrible. I don't like how Fire did it, even though they were a little looser. I actually don't think it's good. I actually think the normal at the table thing without the multiple DMs works because I think you got to be realistic about long term what you can actually do, right? And so the idea of having a big community of multiple DMs doesn't work. A few DMs I can totally understand, but it becomes raw. The raw thing is terrible. The old school approach to the conversation where it's raw rules is written, raw rules is written. I'm like, that only comes from one thing, and that is tournament play, AD&D 1E. Every other edition is the DM can do whatever they want, and even the home version of AD&D 1E is not just the optional things. You are the king. DM is king. DM is authority over the entire game, and it's be like, well, what changes? Well, of course, so much of the game you change. When does this not be an AD&D? It's your game. So Gary always pushed for what makes AD&D proper for tournament play. This is what AD&D is to tournament play. That's Raw. Raw is a terrible, fucking terrible way to destroy creativity. And it's a terrible way to approach a game. And I would not want to create a person thinking Raw is the way they should go. And I've seen that. I met some creative guys over the years where they're like trying to do Raw AD&D winning. I'm like, dude, he'd be telling me, well, it's by the book. I mean, I could do this with it, but I'm not. And I'm like, why not? He's like, well, they want to play Raw. I'm like, wait. You have a creative mind, and you're cutting your creativity down for sticking to the book? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, dude, you're a real D. I'm like, you're limiting yourself in the worst ways. I think the mentality of the game is now player focused. Old school was party focused, and player going down was an injury to the party. We accepted some sacrifice, more party first mentality. It's a group completely animal. It is not a solo RPG game. It's a team sport. That's the term I use for old school. Team sport. And creative thinking. It is working with a team. I always hope people always think that way. That's why I get at some people that go to the table and get very selfish with their gameplay too. It's like, accept everything for what it is. To me, I think you totally get it. I like combat. I like social interaction. I love dealing with traps. I love getting out, using your skills to hunt, do whatever the fuck. I love crafting things. As a game master, I make sure I love every part of the game. That's it. And I make sure I love it. And then it is a group-based game where even when you do things as an individual, that's fine, but you're still playing a team sport. So the support from other players, even if you do say like you're the thief who goes off to do other things, or assassin, AD&D 1E, I think there's no problem with that, but is what, like, every time you do something solo, it's still in consideration of the others. There's always a consideration of group, of team, of it's a team sport. It doesn't mean you can't do individual things. I actually would not oppose that. It's just, is it to harm the idea of working with the other people? Well, if you're doing that, or you're a selfish player, you are sabotaging social interaction to kill social interaction and the fun other people might have with it, so you can get only what you want from the game. And I hate players that do that. Like, I'll notice them. Okay, so these 4 players love social interaction. You have sabotaged it for them, so you can force the game back into combat, right? Okay, yeah. No, we're going to go back into social interaction. You try that again, you're off my table. And they try it again, they're gone. And there's too many players like that in the hobby, and I hate the idea of catering to them. Now, here's what I find, Amble. When you're aggressive with players like that, 30% will actually adjust and play the game with everybody else. So that's good. And we should all know that that happens. Don't just think you just get rid of guys. Like, guys understand, and guys that are selfish or like that, here's the thing. If they stick around, they'll be happy with a game master like me. There's a reason. They respect me. The problem is with players like that, they have to learn on their own to adjust, because if they go to a game where the game master and the players actually let them control what's going on, here's the sad thing, and this is the sad truth. Those same players will have no respect for the game master allowing them to get away with it. So they become unhappy no matter what. They get to control the game, but they lose respect. Their attitudes change. It becomes a very negative thing. So in a way, you have to do that. And when players like that get pushed away from the game, that won't change. 30% will, but the 70% won't. In a way, I want them pushed out of games. And you might be like, Steve, that's cruel. Steve, that's cruel. I'm like, no. I don't want them pushed out of the hobby. You're misunderstanding. I want them to have a hard time gaming. So they have to figure it out on their own, that they have to adjust to a team sport and not a solo game. And they will, if they're pressured to not have a game to play. Same thing with game masters that are running the game terribly. That's where I said earlier, when I see players that stay at their tables, I'm like, you players are as much of a problem as the bad game master. And they'll be like, what do you mean? They're like, well, if most of you just leave that table, and that means that guy doesn't have a game because you leave his game for terrible stuff, he's abusive, whatever, he has to either quit or change. You don't get to make a new game with rules to restrict the good game master. You need to put social pressure on the bad game master, and that will do the trick. You don't have to break the game to make him act right. You have to get up and walk away from the table. And then you have to have principles too. You have to say to yourself, if you're going to take part in the hobby, what do you want to do? You want to have a good experience, right? Okay. So you should have a rule that if you can't have one, you simply won't have an experience. Meaning, I'll say this to any group of bad players that figured like, well, they were the only players around. Just say you put me in a place where I could only get, say, 5 players and there was nobody else to recruit. They'd be like, well, Steven, you have no choice. You either fucking put up with us or you can't run the game. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to watch grass grow. They'd be like, what do you mean? Well, I'll go watch grass grow, and if I just never run into new players to play a game with, fine, I'll just never have a game. Because unless it's good, I won't run it. And we got to get more people like that in the hobby that say to themselves, hey, I'd rather go play a computer game or go read a book or go do something else in life than to sit down and have a bad experience at a table where I try to have, like, why they're trying to play a game where they're not going to be happy. I'm like, that game master is being shitty, right? He's not adjusting, right? Okay. He's the only DM or game master around, right? Yeah. Okay, go read a book. Quit gaming for a while. You'll be like, but I want to play. Yeah, you want to play, but what do you want to have? A good experience or a bad one? Everyone will answer good experience. I'm like, well, can't get it with him. Go read a book. And if more players walk away from him, he has to go away or change. Right? Right. Social pressure is a magic way of controlling bad players that are selfish and game masters. But then we have to have the nerve, like, it's like I said to a lot of my groups get this after experienced players get with me. They'll be 8 months in and they're having great sessions with me. And they'll hear the horror stories from the selfish players in other games. And they realize that's not happening in my game with them. They're just having a great time. And it's even if at first, when they first meet me, they see me being aggressive with a player like this. They might think at first like I'm being a bit of an ass, but I'm like, if you can be a fair referee, you earn a lot of respect. Players can turn the gaming to the DM's table style for firm convictions. It is important because to me, it's like this. At first, it could be like, oh, you're a shitty guy. But but they only see me because I'm being aggressive with a guy that will not like. I have to be aggressive with that player. I have to be very forward with them. If you do this again, you got to go. But I give warnings because you always got to remember players look at every other player like as a representation of themselves. So when I keep saying Anvil, I give warnings to players before I just boot them out. I try my best to never just boot a player out. It's a warning. If they break it again, they go. Because I do understand the mentality of other players. Even the asshole in a way represents them. And I want to make sure that they all know that I won't abuse players. So the warning is to show, hey, if there's something up here, I'll give you a warning first. I'll have the talk with you first. I won't just boot you out so you can see that I don't just casually mistreat players, right? And very important to set that standard with your players so they know that because that's a representation of them. And they want to make sure that if there's a misunderstanding, I'll talk to them first. Like there is a warning, there is a conversation. Yes, that's always my attempt. But you got to either be aggressive and that player adjusts, which is good, or they go away. The good thing is it's 8 months down the line when the players are having consistent good sessions with me where they realize my aggression was good, especially when they look over at another table and the selfish players have remained in that game and they see the problems and they realize right away, they'll realize they'll clue in. They're so lucky to be in a game without those issues. And it's like, yeah, but the only reason you're in that game without those issues is because when you first met me, you had to encounter a moment where I might have had to come across as a prick to you. But in the process, I kept that bad player out of the game who wouldn't adjust. And because of that, you get better sessions 8 months down the road. That's why your game is going consistently well with me, right? But now, again, when you get experienced players go from bringing new people around, they'll get it right away, right? But sometimes you do get that new group of players, and you just got to let players know that I give warnings because it's always a warning before saying right off the table. Because again, you do have to realize the mentality of players. They see every player, even the guy who's acting not so well. In a weird way, they see that person as a representation of them. And you got to let players know in case there is a misunderstanding. Hey, you'll give a warning first. You'll have a talk first before you say go, right? So at least they have an opportunity and they know there's no just outright mistreatment of them. If there's an issue, you'll bring it to them. Here's my issue. I don't want to, and then you can have that talk. Oh, okay, and have that good conversations, and that way you get to the adjustment, right? But you do got to give a warning because I see a lot of DMs out there over the years kick players right off the table, and then they'll lose a couple more players. I'm like, I guarantee you lose your players because as much as that guy seemed like an asshole to you, the players will, even if they don't verbally understand what they've done, they will look at that player that you're kicking out on the spot as a representation of them. And mistreatment of that player is the mistreatment of them. So you sort of got to understand that. It's one thing for how you see it. You just got to understand the way players are going to see it too. And I've been on both sides of the fence, just because I haven't played in decades, I always try to make sure the one thing when I quit playing, I said to myself, what I've learned as a player, I have to carry with me into the future. Because even if I don't want to play again, I don't want to be guilty of forgetting how a player thinks. So what I did was I wrote a bunch of things down when I quit playing. When I retired, like I played for about 10 years and I quit. As far as playing the games, I became a dedicated game master, not a forever game master, because that's the guy who has no choice. I get games offered to me all the time. A dedicated game master. When I did that, I just made a list of things that I've remembered for decades now about what it is like to be a player, and then make sure I carry that forward and I don't forget that. And I always remind myself what it is to be a player when I'm dealing with players, right? So it's very important to me because I just lost interest in playing, but I don't want to have to go back to playing to relearn because I don't really like playing tabletop role-playing games. I know that's going to sound weird to people, but I really don't like it. And I get offered them all the time. I get in a campaign instantly right now. Instantly. No problem at all. Lots of people want me to play because especially guys over the years where I've filled in for them, guys who have known me. Like if Steven plays your game, you won't look stupid. Like, what do you mean? Steven will make any game master, even a bad one, look like a champion. Because I really won't make you look stupid. I'll work with you. I'll make you look good. I'll bring a lot of verbal energy to the game. I've energized the other players that are going to play at the table with me. And I never look to sabotage a game master when I step into their game. I have a very good reputation on that because it's not like I played full time, but I filled in, played when I was younger, and people know how I am. And they're like, if you're a good game master, great, he's fine. If you're a bad game master, Stephen will give you your best night you've ever had. He'll make you feel good. He'll rise up you. He'll make you feel better, and he'll bring a lot of energy for your other players. Now, it's having a reputation like that means I get offered a lot of games because I fill it in, but it's like, it's got to tell the guys, like, I just don't enjoy it, dude. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I have my poison. I came into the hobby with as far as D&D. When I started D&D, I got in with my first DM, which was my mentor, and he's the best DM I've ever encountered in my life. But that was an issue. That meant I started at the top of the mountain, and everything else is all like downhill from there. Like it's every other guy I ran into after that was just like compare. I was like, it wasn't the same freedom, wasn't the same fun. No, like I didn't hate people around the game. I just like you're not able to do what I want to do. And they were like, what? I'm like, dude, you start the game and react to whatever I'm doing. I'm like, what about hooks? And don't just react to whatever I'm doing. I won't sit at the thing with my character. Don't worry. I will take the initiative on anything. I don't need pressure. I don't need nothing. I will make shit happen. I just need a DM who can keep up. Right. And it's not bragging. It's just like, it's not a brag thing. It's just, I'm very forward, go. Right. I will play. I will do whatever I want to do. And I prefer that gaming. I like the sandbox freedom. And I'm a very take the initiative player. And I need a DM who can just improvise, think on the spot, bring that on a pretty high scale. And if he can, I can play the game. That's how I'll enjoy it. Now, if I fill in, I can play really great in whatever box you put me in. My problem is, no matter how good I seem that night playing, no matter how much fun I seem to have had, I don't like it. Not as much as you think. Not enough to want to repeat it. And guys have played with me where they'll run the game for me like, man, you had a lot of fun tonight. It's okay. You see, like you had more fun than anybody at the table. I hope that's what you think. That's the face I put on. I'm glad it worked. But it's a face, dude. It's a face. It's a bit of an act, right? Anyway. How AD&D 1E affected miniature gameplay. AD&D 1E did not make miniatures mandatory, nor did any TSR edition. Nor did it transform Dungeons & Dragons into a true tabletop miniature war game. I don't think it's ever going to... I think I'm just going to be a dedicated game master for the rest of my life at this stage. We never know, my dude. Never know. I'll probably still fill in for people every so often, right? But, yeah. Really depends. I'm just so picky. I just want someone who could just let me play the game. Like, just give me... It's like... It's not Grand Theft Auto that way, but it's sort of like the mindset of let me just go. Let me just go. I'll give you everything you need to make the game. And I'll make it really easy. Like if I found the right game master, you don't have to worry. I will make my own adventure. You just got to be able to react to it, dude. That's it. And it won't be hard, but yeah, I can put a good face on. And I bring 110%. I do that because I respect the person I'm playing the game with, and I like playing the game for. I would say, I was considered. It's not a brag thing. It's gonna sound like ego, but I was considered one of the best players at the time when I was younger. I was so good. I was a young guy that got in the game with a bunch of older guys. They accepted me because I could think really wildly good, right? I'm made for the hobby, my friend. Made for it. Made for performing. Hence why I'm a YouTuber. That's why I piss off a lot of guys, because I have a lot of impact. But that's just how it works, dude. So nor did it transform Dungeons and Dragons into a true tabletop miniature war game. Instead, it formalized and expanded many combat situations where knowing everyone's position became increasingly valuable. Many groups still played entirely through description, but miniature, graph paper, or simple tokens became far more useful for visualization on the battlefield, or for battlefield. Positioning became more important. Monsters' abilities encouraged players to think carefully about where they stood during combat. Questions like, who is protecting the magic user? Can the cleric safely reach a fallen ally? Is the thief in position for a back attack? Can the fighter hold a narrow passage? Is the party spread out enough to avoid a devastating attack? Became common tactical considerations. Miniatures made these decisions much easier to manage. Area of effect attacks. Many monsters attacked entire groups rather than single targets. Examples include dragon breath weapons, gas clouds, cone of cold, lightning bolts, and like explosive magical effects. Miniatures made it much easier to determine which characters were caught in an attack and which had avoided it. Spell and breath weapon templates also became much easier for DMs to adjudicate when using figures or markers. Oh, just to say, Amblehammer, I sound like I'm talking a little out of my ass sometimes. I remember I've gamed with a few guys online after I said all this years ago on YouTube. They were like, after they went and gamed with me, they're like, hey, you're true with everything you say. I'm like, but you call being real, my friend, right? You can be confident. It's not always ego. I'm just very confident. I say this stuff because people have told me I'm pretty good at this stuff. So. Monsters use the battlefield. Many AD&D monsters didn't simply charge straight ahead. Some could fly, burrow underground, climb walls, attack from ceilings, move through water, pass solid objects, and even teleport. These abilities turned the battlefield into part of the encounter, rewarding players who paid attention to positioning and the environment. I'm being nice tonight because I'm not a miniature gamer. I do pure theater of the mind, but I decided doing AD&D 1E monsters. The guys online love their miniature stuff. So I figured I'd shock people and be really, really nice about the subject. Really, really, really nice about it. Large monsters change the battlefield. Giants, dragons, purple worms, hydras, and other enormous creatures made players think differently about the space around them. Because there is some truth to this. This is the way Gary's seen some of the gaming was. They used miniatures, but they understood most people could not afford the metal miniatures and stuff at the time. So most either used chips, paper, or pure theater of the mind. That was so common. And TSR never, ever made miniatures mandatory, which means there's only one mandatory way to play the game. Pure theater of the mind. Because to say pure theater of the mind is not mandatory is to say there's a third option. Because there has to be a way that you have to play the game if you don't use paper or chips, which are optional miniatures, optional chips, optional paper. Well, if you don't use the optional stuff, what are you left for default? Pure theater of the mind. And if you tell me that's optional, well then okay, there has to be a default way. So where's your third option? There is none. Right? It's either you're using the object stuff, which is miniatures and that, or you're using pure theater of the mind. The game always had sort of two forms of looking at combat, which was a vague way of looking at pure theater of the mind, so you could actually do pure theater of the mind, which is going to be the majority. And they just couldn't afford. Remember, miniatures, just to tell you guys, don't become affordable until WotC. It's metal miniatures until WotC gets 3rd edition, and they make miniature gameplay pretty much close to mandatory with 3rd edition, and they go plastic miniatures. Before WotC, its miniatures are metal and hard to afford for a lot of people. Doesn't mean they weren't used, but the frequency in their use was very low. Most people did pure theater. So, like I said about large monsters, the space is used differently. Rather than introducing formal reach rules, AD&D encouraged DMs to consider how these creatures occupied rooms, tunnels, caves, entrances, and other confined areas. Miniatures help visualize Visualized blocked passages, escape routes, surrounding creatures, battlefield congestion, the advantages and dangers of fighting in tight spaces. Protecting the backline, because many monsters could paralyze, charm, drain levels, grapple, swallow victims whole. Players became much more conscious of protecting vulnerable party members. Fighters often form frontline, while spellcasters and other less durable characters stay behind them, making party formation an important tactical decision. Missile weapons became more tactical. AD&D expanded tactical considerations of ranged combat. Players and DMs needed to think about line of fire, cover, concealment, firing into melee, friendly fire, and obstacles between attacker and the target. Miniatures made these situations much easier to judge during play. Movement became easier to visualize. AD&D placed greater emphasis on movement rates. Characters move differently depending on combat, exploration, the weight, terrain. Miniatures help players and DMs quickly understand who could reach an enemy, escape danger, or block advancing monsters without constantly estimating distance. The dungeon became part of combat. AD&D encouraged DMs to make the environment itself part of every battle. Combat frequently involved doorways, narrow corridors, bridges, stairways, pits, rivers, choke points, pillars, caverns. Gary Gygax's tournament adventures especially rewarded players who used terrain intelligently rather than simply charging into battle. Miniatures made the tactical features much easier to understand. Again, I have my criticism of the tournament play and even miniatures, but this is the way TSR explained it. This is me being real with their explanations. Not saying I even agree with all this language, because you guys know when I do coverage, I'm doing what TSR has put out there. This part's not a lot of my opinion. This is what TSR and Gary said, and I think many of the people that are into this stuff believe this to be true. I'm not saying there's no truth to it. I'm just saying I have a varied view, and I'm not saying this is all not true. Just to be clear. Monsters forced new formations. Different monsters encourage different battlefield responses. Players learn to spread out against dragons, hold choke points against large groups, protect weaker members from fast-moving monsters, adjust formation depending on the enemy's abilities. Rather than relying on a single marching order or combat formation, parties increasingly adapted to each other's encounters, or to each encounter. Sorry, each other's encounters. Each encounter. Blah, blah, blah. Miniatures were still optional. Despite these tactical improvements, AD&D 1E never required miniatures. Groups successfully played using theater of the mind, rough sketches, graph paper, miniatures, or tokens, or even coins and other simple markers. The rules supported all of these approaches, allowing each group to decide how much battlefield detail they wanted. Why this all mattered? AD&D 1E did not become a miniature war game, but it made battlefield positioning easier to visualize and more important to many encounters. Area attacks, varied monster abilities, tactical movement, environmental hazards, missile fire, and complex dungeon layouts all rewarded players who paid attention to where everyone was standing. Miniatures became a valuable aid for understanding the battlefield, while imagination remained at the heart of how AD&D was played, because that was how the majority played it. The AD&D First Edition Monster Manual did far more than introduce new creatures. It gathered years of ideas into a single well-organized reference, expanded monster lore, standardized monster presentation, helped shape how Dungeon Masters built encounters in fantasy worlds. More importantly, it became the blueprint for how fantasy role-playing games would present monsters, influencing not only later editions of Dungeons & Dragons, but countless RPGs that followed. The artwork was great. It changed the reward, the treasure, from random treasure to the treasure being connected to the monsters itself, what you would get. Monster size definitely changed. Alignment definitely changed how things were. Like the alignment of creature became important. Monster size became important. Uh, Things like the number of pairing, just all of these changes were big, big part of AD&D 1E Monster Manual. It effectively brought a major change to the game. And that's what people should know about it. It's like you might ask me about the individual monsters. I'm like, right? Battle is flexible, flowing dance, and miniatures are simply used, organized. A mini was understand the battlefield, not a locked position. There you go. And I don't want to say that people didn't use graph paper, drawings, or chips, little pieces that would sort of treat like miniatures. But Amble, you're an old school guy from back then, because there's the YouTubers now that got into the old school late or were really stuck at home. They actually will disagree with me on this, where every guy that I know that's a true old school guy will totally get what I'm saying, which I can tell you get already. As much as people want to attach miniature gameplay to old school, most DMs, most situations were pure theater of the mind because miniatures were costly. Some used paper, but it was a lot of pure theater of the mind, pretty common because it was always optional all the way through second edition. What I think a lot of old school guys don't realize is a lot of them came in a little later back into the old school. Like some dropped out and came back in later. When they came back in, miniatures seemed common. I just don't think a lot of old school guys understood why they were common. They weren't common because they were old school. They were common because at that stage, WotC had brought out plastic. They changed the game on miniatures. It went from metal, high costly miniatures to plastic. And we forget that a lot of wargamers didn't cross over with their miniatures for gaming. So there was so much theater of the mind. I was started in 87. When I started in 87, most of the guys around the gaming club were pure theater of the mind. Most of the people I was meeting were pure theater of the mind. There were a few guys that did miniatures, very few. Most times people brought their miniatures. There was collectors. The miniature thing I remember wasn't so much people playing with them. It was people collecting them and painting them as a hobby. Like there was an actual hobby for miniatures, but it wasn't so much gaming with them. You bring some cool ones to the table. It was the hobby for miniatures was collecting and painting miniatures. It was a big deal. And I understand miniatures. I always want to make sure miniature people know this. I think they're cool too, my friends. I'm a nerd. Legit nerd. But I actually enjoy being in the mind. Like I honestly, I can do combat in the mind like breathing air. And I enjoy the pace of combat in the mind. I enjoy gaming in the mind. That's all it is. It's not me being opposed or hating miniatures as if I hate individuals that really identify with miniatures. I personally just don't like. I'm not a big on using because I don't see the point because I like being here. I like the experience here. I like the pace here. But I totally get it. And as a nerd, I can look at the miniatures and go, cool. So I think everybody gets that, right? Everybody gets that detail. But yeah, I still prefer root. But yeah, a lot of guys came back into the old school later. A lot of started, dropped out, came back in. A lot of guys that came back in, I was like, I've talked to guys where they're like, miniatures were always the thing. I was like, so you took a time for like 10 years. Yeah. So when you first start, you're playing a little bit like theater of the mind. They're like, oh yeah, but when I came back in 2001, I just started miniatures full time. I was like, yeah, you did? Yeah, I'm like, and they were plastic, right? Yeah. Well, that's not old school, dude. You're like, huh? Like, yeah, plastic is not until WotC. WotC is plastic. It's not TSR. It's not old school. So a lot of old school guys just confuse, they relate plastic. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was, look, I'm not going to go over every single monster in the monster manual. And I know that's what people would be expecting. I really looked at the monster manuals, how it affected gameplay, because it's the first book they bring out. And why do they bring that book out? Because it is meant to affect how the game is going to be viewed. And monsters are a heavy part of the game. And Gary really did that on purpose. And like we talked about, like how they influence even second edition. I love the influence it has on the monster manual, where it creates monsters that are living beings. And that's where me and Amble and other people were talking about, like it it brings the monsters to life. So you got personalities. So you got creative tools with them, and the gameplay tools from level drain to paralyzing. I think all those stuff is way more better to focus on. These concepts of battle and whatnot were very important. And yes, a lot of stuff that we like Gamble, sadly, has been dropped from the new school gaming. Like traps or things where you can get caught into it for a period of time. Well, you're stuck in that so many rounds, man. That's boring. Yeah, but that's consequences. The idea of facing anything negative in the game when you're facing challenges or failure is the game. We do want you to feel it. I do want you to not want to go through that, right? Well, that's the main aim. I thought that's more important because everyone talks about the individual monsters, the goblins, to this, to that. And I'm like, how can I come at this differently? How can I take a good shot at this differently? Right? Because any other night I could do monsters, but I'm like, how important is the monster change to AD&D 1E? And it's really important. The way they bring that book together, the gameplay, people don't understand just how big of an issue that was. Bringing the monsters to life, giving them ecologies, giving them explanations. And you got like a guy like Amble here who's talking exactly how influenced he was, and I was, and many others were, by it, because it brings the monsters from a board game to, hey, we're going to make these things more real, right? We're going to bring them to life through this book. And just generally talking about, like, I could talk about the monsters that do the level drain, but I think that would be boring. I want to talk about the level drain. I want to talk about the paralyzing, the advancements in poison, the constructs. I want to hit all these really quickly, and I don't want to take. I'm not going to sit here and go through each monster hitting up like a 4 to 5 hour stream doing it, right? So I figured that was a good way of covering a lot of things at once. And I thought it'd be really nice at the end there, which was talked about. Look, Gary, as much as he made it optional, did like miniature gameplay. I will not deny that. I personally don't like it. He liked it. A lot of guys like him like it. And I figure as much as I can say I like Pure Theater of the Mind, I figure some of the miniature guys would like me to cover that fact, because AD&D 1E does change the approach with chips and miniatures, the battlefield. And to a lot of AD&D 1E guys that talk about it now, they love to talk about these facts. And I figured I would not be doing them that justice if I didn't say that, because that was important to Gary, even though it was optional. And it all could still play with Pure Theater of the Mind. Gary wanted to keep advancing the optional miniature thing. It's just he kept keeping it optional because Gary was very wise on being a businessman. They were unaffordable. So if you make it that D&D has to be played with miniatures, there's a large portion of people that can't play the game no more. It's unwise to put it to the miniature thing because it's people cannot afford it. WotC did the right thing, and I think TSR should have done this sooner themselves. But WotC did it. They figured out, go to plastic, get rid of the metal. Go to plastic. And WotC made third edition more lean into miniature gameplay than the old school. It was always optional with the old school. It becomes less optional with WotC, and they do it a smart way, because it's not like WotC didn't agree with Gary. If it's metal, that's too much. Even WotC won't do it. But if WotC's going to do it, they have to go to a way of doing it that is affordable. And going from metal to plastic is the big fucking jump. That's the genius move by WotC. I don't care what you think of WotC. It is a smart move. If you're going to bother leaning into the miniature stuff, which you're going to, you got to make it that people can afford it. That's the one thing Gary understood, that if you can't afford it, you can't go to there. And why would WotC go to that I think WotC just had more funds, more money to. They had more money than TSR. TSR, I don't think is as easy at the time. Could turn everything to plastic. I think there's a lot of financial reasons that could not happen through TSR right away. They needed to have more success selling their products to get enough money to even try that. WotC buys D&D, but they have the money to go there. They have the money to push towards it. And that's why they could. So there. But I figured I'd be fair to the miniature guys. Give them a love and just be honest about Gary wanted the game. If it was up to him, it would have been miniatures. And I, as a non-miniature guy, as a guy who prefers pure theater of the mind, I'm being honest about this. If it was up to Gary, the game would have been mandatory miniatures. They do, but it's. I always said to guys, my take on pure theater of the mind was, you don't need to, and I think personally, this is a personal opinion, Anvil, because I ran the game with miniatures, mind you, so I want to be clear on this. Not a lot, but I've done it for groups that have asked me to, just to tell you how open-minded I am. Right? I know miniature lover too. It's like guys that love miniatures. Now, in real life, there's not this big clash or hate one of each other because you can just sit down and have a coffee with people that like miniatures, and I don't. Well, always in person, I shoot the shit with miniature lovers. I'm friends with them. I buy fucking miniatures for them. Right? That's how cool it is in person. Socializing is a lot easier. You don't get into these personal clashes with hates. They like me. They think I'm cool. I like them. Think cool. But I personally find it faster, and I find being in the mind better experience for the immersion. I do find it works better. I find it quicker to get there through explanation and painting the picture through the imagination without the need of a trigger. I think the trigger is just the words, and I can control that. I personally find miniatures holds back a bit from that a bit, or takes longer to get into the flow and to get into that immersion. So I actually think it's a boom, but I understand the coolness of it, or people wanting it. I understand it. So it's I tell people they don't got to defend it with me. Just because I tell you my opinion doesn't mean anything. And I'll react to you in a minute there, Black Rose. My final statement on this is I always tell the people on here, when I first made a video years ago saying I prefer pure theater of the mind, people got to remember there is like thousands of pro miniature videos where it's pro miniature and the guys degrade pure theater of the mind. Like, so when I made a video like 7 years ago on here where I said I prefer pure theater of the mind, I was a drop of rain against an ocean of people that like miniatures and that degraded pure theater of the mind gameplay through combat. And here I am, one guy coming in with thousands opposing me on the other side, going, well, hey, if people can do a pro miniature video where they say miniatures are better than pure theater of the mind, I didn't extremely attack miniature gameplay, but I said I actually have the opposite view, so I'm going to put out a view because I have the right to be at the table in the conversation as well. Or explain I prefer pure theater of the mind, and I actually think it's better. I actually think the results of it are better. Like, I actually think it's not an attack on people that like miniatures. It's just I purely believe this to be true. And it's here I am, a raindrop against an ocean. And people, if you can put the ocean out there, nobody should be offended by the raindrop. And if somebody makes a big issue about the raindrop, I'm like, what about the fucking ocean? Are you telling me there can be thousands on the other side, and if I bring out one video, one raindrop on the other, people are going to freak out? That's too much control over the dialogue conversation. That's insecure people. That's very weak-minded insecurity. If a raindrop offends you while you're backed up by an ocean, you're insecure. If this cannot exist in the conversation without somebody attacking somebody over it, you're insecure. Right? So, boom. Live through the whole evolution of minis through Citadel Miniature. We're just Game Workshop, Warhammer, and that's a sort of history that's wargaming. Yep, but it's pretty much more of the same. Turning the plastic, but maintaining high prices, lowering quality. Yeah, I find nothing. I have no issue with people that use miniatures. People think I just like, dude. My only time I've talked about this stuff is just saying, and I like to make the point, because old school guys will get on here and they're deceitful about miniatures. Kind of like the old school, we use miniatures. I'm like, okay, you're not really old school then, if you're saying that. You're like, yes, no, no, no. 90% of DMs did pure theater of the mind. Easily. Miniature were optional. Most DMs did pure theater of the mind combat, and most of them didn't do the large, massive combat, war combats that you think. They didn't. Most did pure theater of the mind. Go to a gaming club, you meet almost every guy around. And I'd be telling guys, because they didn't understand this. A lot of guys in the D&D world, old school, didn't get this. They'd be like, well, me and my friends at home did it. I'm like, well, here's the thing, what you don't understand, especially with AD&D 1E coming out. Less than 10% of the people in the hobby were the guys at home with their friends. Because most people coming into the hobby were new. And what would happen is most guys came into the hobby without a group of friends built in. Their friends weren't going to play. Their family wasn't going to play. And this is the majority of players. Like fucking almost over 90% of players coming in were guys with no groups. Public gaming was huge. That's why tournament play became. That's why Gary actually aimed at tournament play, because public gaming was such a big thing with D&D that they thought, why not play to it with tournament play? Because public gaming was huge. It was where the majority was. That's the vast majority world of old school. It's guys coming in, nerds without a group built in. And so public game mastering became big. And I say public game mastering, I'm not talking about guys who game at the shop. These are guys that game at school, meeting people at school. If you're a school kid, you go to the library, you go to public places, and you gather up strangers, and then you might run it at your home or their home, but it's usually groups of strangers. But we do campaigns, all normal gaming. It just wouldn't be the normal, right? Yeah, and there's people nowadays that are used to using miniatures. They think, they would tell me theater of the mind is like, you can't really do it theater of the mind. I'm like, well, 90% of DMs did, but I'm like, there's little tricks you learn as a DM when you got to do it with theater of the mind. It's like, first off, theater of the mind just needs basic description. So people need to know basically where they are compared to the monster. Like, and where things are. Like, left is this, left here, behind you, what's up, what's down, what's in front of you. Okay, range. They're about 100 yards away. You don't have to play with numbers. Remember, you want to be accurate on purpose. It's okay. You make your exception here because people need to know certain things, details. Okay, they'll know the range, so they know how much they can move. They know what's left or right to them. Then when things update, when things change as a game master, you got to be able to track that. This is where talent as a game master to remember things. You remind your players sometimes at the end of, pretty much at the end of a round. Okay, you moved up to here, so you're about a round away from these guys. You moved back here. You went over here. You got under the wagon. Okay, reminders. Monsters moved up here. You took down this one over here. And it's what they don't get is, yes, the raw DM who used module, who was not that talented, that guy would use paper or chips or would blow up his head. Most DMs were very talented people, very fucking good at memory stuff, right? And the more you use your imagination, the better your memory is. That's what guys don't understand. Pure theater of the mind, and you're a theater guy, so you know this really well. I wouldn't even have to Anvil, you know this for sure. I'm not even making this up. You'll know this for sure. Guys who don't know don't even believe me, but guys like yourself will understand this. If you're in the mind, your memory works better. Like, it just improves. Like, the more you do your imagination, the more you remember things really easy. And the more that reminder isn't just for reminding players, you're reminding yourself. It's not hard to keep track. And if you really need to, you have the note stuff down for your monster. You can always make little notes like, this guy moved up, like, or up 30 yards. Close. You could any note you want, and you can scratch off numbers. It takes 2 seconds to do things. Not hard. Not hard at all. And usually you can keep the board in your mind and going forward. And almost every game master I've known could do that, like breathing air. It's just if you get to the point where the only thing you do is ever run the game with miniatures and you don't know what that's like, you might think what I'm saying is impossible. But I'm like, no, not if you're really back in the old school. That's what a lot of DMs were doing, and we did it pretty well. And you wouldn't have a hobby. You wouldn't even have D&D as a hobby if people couldn't do pure theater of the mind. And most games outside of D&D use pure theater of the mind for combat. For almost every game. Almost every game used pure theater of the mind. And the reason that the guys could is because guys could run it that way. That's why the game designers weren't worried about using miniatures. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that. That's true. Though I have nothing against the miniature guys. I really don't. I ran games for groups that wanted me to run with miniatures. So I've done it. Right? Not my cup of tea, but I have no issue. In person, this is not a big issue, but online 7 years ago, this turned a lot of guys on me. On here, you're a character on the screen, so people freak out. Like, it's okay to hate you instead of just thinking they disagree with you. And just think about it. I had guys attack me for years, have hated me for years over my take on miniatures and pure theater of the mind. They're amble. You're new to me, but there's a lot of guys that hate my guts all over that. They lied and made lies up about why they hate me later, but it's really over that. And it's like I find it weird to get on here with the way people socialize on here, because I know guys in person that love miniatures that no, I don't, and we all get along really well. I'm like, oh, you're doing your miniature game? Yeah. There's a guy who hates miniatures. But that's how casual it is. And we don't hate each other at all. We love each other. We get along well. Right? No problem at all. They don't care. I don't care if they like it. They don't care if I don't. Just doesn't matter. But on here, everything is personal, and people got to attack you and hate you over it, which is really weird. And then it turns into stuff like on here, it's so weird. They attack each other as YouTubers and that, and then they'll do content together. And I'm like, dude, I don't do that. I'm like a real person in real life. You attack me in a certain way, I might cut you off for the rest of your life. It's like, you lied about me. Like, yeah, okay, I'm not going. When do you come on the stream? Nope. You're a chicken. Oh, you can think that, but I'm not going on your stream because you lied about me. Now, I'll tell guys, hey, you can apologize in public for lying. And if you're willing to apologize, well, then I might consider going on stream. If you keep attacking and take too long, you might get it to the point where I develop into a point where I don't like you. So if it gets that far, then it really doesn't matter if you apologize or not. Anyway, at that point, I'm just like, dude, I don't like you. You made me not like you. You've done too much shit. I have self-respect, and I like the YouTube thing. I like my audience, but it's just like I appreciate that, dude. And hey, you're an old school guy. Boom. I try to teach you stuff. I appreciate the compliment. Really do. I hope you're subbed up to the channel. And well, actually, what am I saying? You're subbed up. There's no way you can chat if you work. So yes. Dude, I would love to have you on the members only thing, but that's only if you ever want to financially throw down on that. I'd love to have you here for that stuff, because I do some members only content too. But I do the D&D every Thursday. So every Thursday is this D&D stuff. If you like just freehand talk, and it's just to talk like this, it's every Tuesday. That's off script. Every weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, I do different games. While you're here, before you go. We'll go into the games and that I got coming up. I'll go really quick, just for July. I just want you to hear this. So this Saturday is Bunnies and Burrows, and then Sunday is Legend of the Five Rings. Members only. The first one will be for July. It's going to be July 8th, and that's a Stargate SG-1 role-playing game. The next classic D&D stream I'm doing is next Thursday, and that's on Unearthed Arcana. And then on July 11th, on that weekend, I'll be doing Dragon Quest, covering Dragon Quest, and then SLA Industries. The next classic D&D one, which will be July 16th, will be the Fiend Folio, right? And I might actually get into some individual monsters for that one. That's a purpose plan. The weekend after that, I'm going to be covering Teenagers from Outer Space, and then Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, classic TTRPG stuff. The second members only stream of the month, because I only do two of them, only do two members only streams. I'll be covering the game Exalted. The next classic D&D one, I think the second last one of the month, is going to be classic D&D AD&D second edition monsters. The last two games of July I'm covering starts on July 25th, which is Conspiracy X, and then Ars Magica. And the last stream of the entire month, now every off script is every Tuesday. I have not mentioned those, but they're every Tuesday. The last stream of the month is July 30th, and that will be covering the module Tomb of Horrors. Well, I hope I like chatting with you. The guys seem to like you too. Stargate one rule, so does Atlantis. Cool, they have a tabletop. Agreed, Zeg, 100%. Yes, nice taking part in the chat here. Appreciate I dragged you. I always get experienced guys, real old school guys that come around. We got Bill, we got Amble, we got Black Rose, we got Zeg, we got Philo. You'll like the guys here, Amble. Bill's another guy. Wait till you run into him, another old school guy like us. Mysteria is like one of my favorite. You should check out some of the past classic D&D stuff I covered if you like this one. But I mean, the guys I attract to this channel are fucking quality fucking people. You'll like chatting with them, I promise you. You'll like it, but they sometimes if something's new to them, they'll sit back and listen, because some of the guys have either they're painting their miniatures. I get some miniature painters here, regardless of what I always said tonight. I got some miniature guys that like to sit back and paint. I got Black Rose, his kid, so sometimes he'll have the baby with him, so he'll listen more than talk. If the guys are new to something, like even Zeg loves to talk, especially when he knows his shit, but Zeg will sit back and listen if it's just me teaching some stuff, right? All right, take care, Amble. Love you. Talk to you soon, my friend. Okay, guys. One more of these, and then I'm probably gone. Yeah, I'm gone. It's 15 minutes to 10 p.m. my time for Black Rose. I know it's really late. For Zeg, I'm sure it's probably late. Oh my. Tonight was a good one. I enjoyed. Yes. I enjoy bringing in some new people like that. Like always, man, we get so lucky here. I hear he's like, Zeg, we fucking, yeah, I'm some lucky man. I drag in some of the best people, like you and Black Rose, but even Anvil and Bill. Okay. You want to know what? You guys are giving me the good hints to go paint. It's late and all that. All right. We'll call it here. We'll call it right here. I love you guys. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. The weekend coming up here, we got the bunnies and burrows and then the 5 ring thing.